Chapter 44. Battling Ma Lang. An antidote. Ling Zhongquan moaned. This origin-shattering powder not only disintegrated his origin power, it also weakened him. It also had extremely powerful poisonous effects, corroding his internal organs and causing him to moan in excruciating agony. Who knew if he was saying these words to Ling Han or Ma Lang, or perhaps he could be saying it to both of them. But Ling Mu Yun could no longer say a word, and could only create a ku-ku-ku sound with his throat. His whole body was covered in cold sweat. The agony he was feeling had to be beyond description. Ma Lang and Yu Zhang did not spare these two men any attention. They only kept staring at Ling Han in shock. Obviously, this brat's pill really had the ability to cure their poison. But the question was, how could there be such a coincidence in this world, that his pill would so coincidentally be an antidote to the origin-shattering powder? Or did that mean the pill this brat had contained the ability to cure multiple types of poisons? You reap what you sow. Ling Han humphed coldly, without any slightest bit of mercy. He turned towards Ma Lang and said, Father, how about you deal with that whatever little poison lord, while I handle this guy? Are you sure? Ling Dongxing was slightly worried. After all, Ma Lang was in the 6th layer of element gathering tier, and thus much stronger than his son, who had just entered the element gathering tier. Don't worry, father, Ling Han put on a confident smile. Hung, where is the law enforcement team? Ma Lang gave a loud shout. As things had already proceeded to this step, he could only use force. Shwa shwa shwa. More than 10 people dressed in black flew in from outside the main hall, each and every one of them exuding a powerful killing intent. Aside from this brat and that woman, execute all the others, Ma Lang said loudly. He knew that Ling Dongxing was in the 9th layer of element gathering tier, and possessed tremendous battle strength. However, he possessed the advantage in numbers, so there was still a chance of emerging victorious. Understood. All the black-clad people answered coldly. They drew their respective weapons and aimed them at Ling Dongxing. Ling Dongxing did not feel any fear. He was in the 9th layer of element gathering tier, so how could he be overwhelmed by a few low-layer element gathering tier martial artists whose only advantage was in numbers? He gave a long hiss and charged towards the black-uniformed group. Ma Lang did not interfere. Instead, he started to circle around Ling Han and said, I have to admit that you surprised me by actually having a pill that could cure the poison especially concocted by Little Poison Lord. I think you must have gotten your hands on an ancient treasure trove, one that not only contained valuable pills that could help a martial artist increase his cultivation rate greatly, but also high-level medicinal pills that could cure all poisons. Otherwise, your cultivation level would not have progressed so quickly. You wouldn't have been able to be completely unscathed either under the influence of the origin-shattering powder. However, all this now belongs to me. He turned a gaze overflowing with greed at Ling Han. But Ling Han only responded with a smile and said, The only thing you can get is death. Damn you! Ma Lang cursed, and threw himself at Ling Han. He wanted to subdue Ling Han in order to force Ling Dongxing to surrender. Ling Han was naturally unafraid. With a ding, he drew his sword from the scabbard. Then, he threw the scabbard to the side and raised his sword in a slash, displaying sword chi. What sword chi? Ma Lang gasped in shock. He immediately retreated, and could not help the deep frown crossing his brow. He looked at Ling Han and said, I never thought that you would have actually managed to form sword chi. You were initially a trash, yet now you have even managed to form sword chi. I am now really more and more expectant. The treasure trove that you had obtained must be of absolutely astonishing value. Now, I need to display some of my true abilities. He withdrew a bent saber from his waist, brandished it a few times, and actually displayed a flash of saber chi too. He revealed an arrogant expression, You're not the only one who can form chi. Those who could form chi had the right to be proud of themselves. Ling Han shook his head and said impatiently, How long are you intending to keep chattering for? Hang, you will regret saying these words. Ma Lang threw himself up, the bent saber in his hand drawn. Xiu xiu, a flash of saber que dance. It seemed as if he had struck twice in one instant. Together with the power he had as a martial artist in the 6th layer of element gathering tier, the power behind his blows was truly terrifying. Lu Yutong could not help her hands clenching into fists, revealing an anxious expression. She knew that Ling Han was very powerful, but Ma Lang was not Hang Zhan. Ma Lang was in the 6th layer of element gathering tier, which was 5 whole layers above Ling Han. In her opinion, this gap was not something that could be compensated by martial arts techniques or experience. But Ling Han looked so confident that she could not bear to stop him. She could only worry from the side, wanting nothing more than to fight in his place. Ling Han gave a humph. His long sword once again slashed and 2 flashes of sword chi rolled out. 2 flashes of sword chi. Ma Lang's eyes were about to pop out of his skull at this. What kind of terrifying comprehension level was this? But he immediately snorted coldly in his heart. So what if Ling Han could form 2 flashes of sword chi? He was a martial artist in the 6th layer of element gathering tier, and possessed an overwhelming power advantage. This was definitely not something an additional flash of sword chi could overcome. The saber he had raised did not change in position, and mercilessly struck down on Ling Han. Ting! The saber and the sword clashed, suddenly producing fiery sparks due to the friction between the 2 blades. Sword chi and saber chi clashed as well, but they cancelled each other out. However, there was still an additional flash of sword chi that continued on its path towards Ma Lang. Pu. Blood blossomed suddenly on Ma Lang's chest. He stumbled backwards, his face filled with disbelief. You have just entered into element gathering tier, but how is it possible that you have such tremendous power? He gasped in shock. When their blows clashed, he managed to estimate that his opponent's power belonged to someone in about the 5th layer of element gathering tier. To get from the 2nd layer of body refining tier to the 5th layer of element gathering tier in a short 2 months. This was something that Ma Lang could not accept in the slightest. Because I am a genius. Ling Han brandished his sword, continuing his attack. Ma Lang gritted his teeth. The word genius was something that he frequently used, and now it was snatched by someone else. He was naturally very displeased at this. Yet his opponent, at the mere age of 16, had already managed to break through to element gathering tier, and even succeeded in forming 2 flashes of sword chi. Ling Han really did deserve the name of genius. Damn it! He did not believe in the slightest that a piece of trash had suddenly attained enlightenment. It must be because Ling Han had obtained that mysterious treasure trove that allowed an idiot to become a genius. This caused his desire to obtain it for himself to soar even higher. This is mine. Mine. His eyes had turned red, jealousy turning him mad. Xiao! He pounced with his bent saber slashing out, and a bright flash of blood red flickered. Scarlet trained kill, he shouted loudly. This was his ultimate technique and was also one of the secret techniques of Stone Wolf sect that could never be taught to others. It was a high-level yellow-grade technique. If he had not been the favorite disciple of 7th Elder, he would never have been taught this saber technique while he was still in element gathering tier, as this was a secret technique that could only be used by the elders. In Stone Wolf sect, high-level yellow-grade martial arts techniques were the best secret techniques they had, and according to rumors, only the sect master had the right to cultivate their one and only black-grade martial arts technique. Stone Wolf Claws, a low-level black-grade martial arts technique. It was also the origin of the Stone Wolf sect's name. The saber's light was bitingly cold, and the flash of saber chi, as well as the real saber, had become crimson and struck towards Ling Han from 2 different directions. Ling Han drew his sword, and used the shocking electricity sword arts. The 2 flashes of sword chi danced together, and were not the slightest bit less grand. Against a mere Ma Lang, he still did not need to put in all his effort and use all 4 flashes of sword chi. Ting 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 ting, the saber and sword clashed repeatedly. The power advantage Ling Han had with the additional flash of sword chi was very obvious. Every time they exchanged blows, Ma Lang would definitely be struck by a flash of sword chi, causing wounds to continuously appear on his body. Ma Lang was both astonished and alarmed. If things continued this way, Ling Han would slowly wear him down. Yu Zheng, help me! He shouted loudly. Chapter 45. Kill them all. Brother Ma, you asked me to help you place the poison, and I've already done so. Helping you deal with this brat does not seem to be a part of our agreement, Yu Zheng said slowly, as if he had not seen that Ma Lang was suffering. Ma Lang knew that Yu Zheng was also a greedy man. He was no longer interested in the benefits he had promised him previously. Though he was reluctant, he could only say, This brat must have discovered some kind of ancient secret trove to be able to progress from the second layer of body refining tier to element gathering tier within a short 2 months. He has even managed to form 2 flashes of sword chi. Just think, how very valuable would this treasure trove be? Let us join forces to force this brat to reveal this treasure trove, and we'll split the contents between the both of us equally. Our future prospects would be beyond measure. Yu Zhang had only known that Ling Han was an extraordinary young man, but he had never imagined that this guy had been so weak in the past. With such a colossal discrepancy between his past and present, it could only be explained by the fact that he had obtained some kind of ancient treasure trove. Even a piece of trash could obtain such a complete transformation. Then what if it was he who had obtained this kind of treasure trove? His breathing became harsh, and killing intent revealed itself in his eyes. His killing intent was even directed towards Ma Lang as well. As long as he managed to obtain that treasure trove from Ling Han, he would definitely kill Ma Lang to keep things quiet. Very well, I shall help you. As he said so, he removed the bundle he had been carrying on his back. From within he withdrew 2 daggers. There was a greenish light flickering from the sharp blades of the daggers. They had been dipped in powerful poison. Yu Tong, get rid of him, Ling Han said casually. Understood, Lu Yu Tong replied. Xiao, her figure flew forwards, making her seem like a descending deity. Too fast. In a flash, she had already appeared behind Yu Zheng. Her right hand forced his hand up, and Yu Zheng could not control the brandishing of the dagger he had been holding, which drew against his throat. Pooh! Blood splattered, and Yu Zheng stumbled back. He used one hand to press onto the wound on his throat as the other frantically searched through his sleeve for the antidote. But his face quickly turned black, and when he finally drew out a jade bottle from his sleeve, his eyes had already lost all signs of life. Pang! He collapsed with his head raised. Till his final moment, he still could not manage to believe that he would actually die here, and furthermore, that such a divinely beautiful cold as ice maiden would actually have such great power that he had not even managed to display a single technique before death. Ma Lang was extremely shocked as well. He too had not imagined that Lu Yutong would be so powerful, and even be able to instantly kill Yu Zheng, a martial artist in the 4th layer of element gathering tier, in one move. Such a genius, why was she willing to lower herself to stay by Ling Han's side? You still dare to be distracted at such a time? Are you complaining that death is not coming fast enough? Ling Han smiled coldly, and brandished his sword in a killing move. Ma Lang raised his saber to parry in panic, yet was still forced to retreat about 7 or 8 steps by the shockwave from this move. Another wound appeared on his body. Let me see you off. Ling Han brandished his sword once again, like a rainbow piercing through the day, presenting a dazzling image. This was the strongest move of shocking electricity sword arts, named Flash Strike. Ma Lang gritted his teeth and raised his saber in a parry. But the saber missed, and with a PU, he only managed to feel a sharp pain in his chest. His heart had been pierced through by the long sword, and the terrifying shockwave generated by this attack immediately exploded his heart. Martial artists in the element gathering tier had a strong vitality. Even though his heart had been exploded, he was not completely dead yet. He kept staring at Ling Han and his mouth opened and closed a few times, as if wanting to say something, yet he did not manage to produce any sound at all. After such a long battle, how could it be that I have not managed to see through your moves? Ling Han knew what Ma Lang wanted to ask, and replied calmly. You're a damn monster, we've only battled just a short while, and you've actually seen through my moves? Ma Lang was spitting out curses in his heart, and he finally breathed his last, unwillingly closing his eyes in death. Ling Han withdrew his sword, and glanced over the scene. Ling Dongxing had dealt with majority of the law enforcers, and even if any of them were so fortunate as to get away from him, Lu Yutong would immediately deal with these leftovers. Meanwhile, Ling Zhongquan and his grandson, Ling Mu Yun, had also died under the powerful effects of the poison. Their eyes were fixed in a stare, filled with a powerful rage, though who knew who was it they hated the most? Ma Lang and Yu Zheng or Ling Dongxing and his son? These 2 traitors, they've gotten off lightly. Ling Han humphed. He had initially intended to kill the 2 of them himself. It's fine they are, after all, clansmen of the Ling clan. Dying in the hands of outsiders is good, Ling Dongxing only sighed. He was, after all, the clan head, and so there were many more things he needed to consider. They naturally need not deal with the bodies themselves. However, killing someone was easy, but dealing with the aftermath. Ling Dongxing had a bit of a headache at this.
Honor, you and Yutong must immediately leave. Go as far away as you can.
Ling Dongxing had decided. He could remain behind and die with the Ling clan, but his son was the hope of the clan. At the very least, he needed to ensure that Ling Han remained safe.
Ling Han smiled and said, Father, I had not done this act out of impulsiveness.
We can let Chen Fenglai deal with this issue. So many people have died, and there's even a disciple of seventh elder. Can he really solve the issue? Ling Dongxing asked, frowning. For the sake of his own life, he would definitely do all he can, Ling Han laughed. Moreover, Yutong is the princess of the Lu clan, one of the 8 great clans of the imperial city. If worst comes to worst, we can reveal her identity. Yet Ling Dongxing still shook his head. He naturally thought of his son as the best young man in the whole world. But would the Lu clan think the same? When he recalled that his own wife was also the great-granddaughter of the 3rd elder of Winter Moon sect, yet in the end, their conclusion was tragic. There was already a previous example. Still, they really are real father and son. Even the women they got to know were of such high, noble status. He could not help feeling a little worried.
As a father, he did not hope in the slightest for Ling Han to follow in his footsteps.
Right, Yutong? Ling Han had never been a father, so he would not be able to understand Ling Dongxing's current thoughts. He saw how Ling Dongxing still looked very worried, and misunderstood his father was still worrying about the issue of Stone Wolf sect, so he asked Lu Yutong for assurance.
N.
Lu Yutong nodded, her expression extremely solemn. When Ling Dongxing saw this, as someone who has had previous experience, how could he not be able to tell that Lu Yutong had already developed feelings for his son? Hopefully this will not be another pair of star-crossed lovers. No, this will definitely not be an ill-fated romance. His son was better than him by 100, 1,000 times, and in the future, he'd definitely be able to exceed the limitations of martial arts of Rain Country. So what would be inappropriate in marrying the daughter of one of the 8 great clans? Ling Han immediately wrote a missive, and had a messenger deliver it at full speed to Stone Wolf sect, addressed to Chen Fenglai. If Chen Fenglai was unable to deal with this matter, then he actually had an alternative solution, and that was Xueqi Xian. Xueqi Xian was a low-level black-grade alchemist. Although he did not have a very high opinion of him, but within Rain Country, Xueqi Xian possessed quite a high status. At least he was someone that the Stone Wolf sect definitely did not dare to trifle with. Lu Yutong was his little female attendant. It would be very embarrassing to be forced to make use of her background. Chen Fenglai received the letter on the 3rd day.
When he had finished reading the contents of the letter, he had almost been shocked to the point of heart attack, thinking how was it that this young master could be such a troublemaker. He had just killed off one Cheng Xiao Yuan, and now he's also killed Ma Lang and a whole law enforcement team. Cheng Xiao Yuan was fine. He was Chen Fenglai's disciple. And so what if he's dead? It's fine as long as Chen Fenglai did not intend to pursue matters. But Ma Lang was old Seventh's disciple, and was also the most excellent one of them. How could he bury this pit? But he had no choice but to do it, for his life was tied to Ling Han. Ling Han did not know how Chen Fenglai had dealt with the issue. He only knew that 2 days later, the latter replied to his message and said that there was no longer any need to worry about anything. Since this matter was already resolved, Ling Han decided to enter 7 Wind Mountains. There was still 1 month before the end of the year, and he needed to achieve at least the 4th layer of Element Gathering tier to have a chance to compete for the first place in the Deyuan tournament. Chapter 46. Entering 7 Wind Mountains. The 7 Wind Mountains encompassed a very wide area. From east to west, they spanned close to 1,000 miles, while from south to north, they covered close to 400 miles. It was the largest mountain range in the northern region of Rain Country. There were many demonic beasts inhabiting the mountain range, and there was also a large variety of different spiritual medicine growing here. Sometimes, some precious metals that could be used to forge high-grade weapons were also discovered here. As a result, there were many who entered here for training trips, as well as many whose target were the numerous treasures in this place. However, the annual death toll amongst those who entered the mountains here was also very high. Some died under the fangs of demonic beasts. Some died because of some dangerous environment they found themselves in, while there were also some who were killed by their fellow human beings. Although no one had actually counted the numbers, most believed over half of the deaths that occurred in Seven Wind Mountains was due to being murdered by other humans. Therefore, the most dangerous existence within Seven Wind Mountains was not any kind of demonic beast, but man. A day later, Ling Han and Lu Yu Tong arrived at Yellow Bridge Town. From here, they could directly enter the mountain range. Because the journey this time round was quite far, they had traveled here on horseback. The two of them stayed one night in an inn in the town, and subsequently left their horses at that inn before setting out towards the mountain range with only a simple bundle on their backs. If they were unable to return within a month, then the inn had the right to sell off their horses. The money earned from the sale would cover the payment to the inn for holding on to their horses for a month. The early morning sun hung high in the sky, its rays shining on the still remaining dewdrops, reflecting a variety of exceptionally beautiful colors and thus presenting a scene full of life. This was a wild, primitive, colossal mountain range. Although there were many people exploring the depths of the mountain range every single day, compared to this gigantic mountain range, the large number of visitors was really insignificant. As Ling Han and Lu Yu Tong breathed in the fresh air around them, they both experienced an indefinable sense of relaxation. They traveled all over the mountain range in search of the rock cave that had been mentioned in the rumors. However, they had searched for 5 days, and although they did find many caves, all the caves they found only led to disappointment. That was reasonable though. If that cave could be so easily found, then wouldn't it have long been discovered by others? In? Ling Han's steps suddenly paused. He heard some sounds of battle. "Let's go take a look," he said. This was his second life, yet he still could not change his curious nature. They followed the sounds and quickly arrived at the bank of a little brook. In the clearing some distance in front of them, there were 2 groups of people who were currently engaged in a deadly battle. This is really a small world. Ling Han shook his head. He knew one of the parties that were currently fighting. They were Lu Dong, Chen Pengju, Xueqi and the others. They had joined forces previously at Balance Mountain to obtain the green spiritual fruit. However, as Hang Zhan's incident happened soon after, the 5 of them were also scared off. He never thought he would see them again here. Out of the group of 5, Lu Dong, Li Hao and Zhu Xueyi had all broken through to Element Gathering Tier, while Chen Pengju and Zhou Chong had also progressed to the 9th layer of Body Refining Tier. Their improvement was very evident. After all, they had each respectively gotten 1 green spiritual fruit. Yet, though their side had 3 elite martial artists in Element Gathering Tier, they were still at a disadvantage as the other side had 4 martial artists in Element Gathering Tier. 3 against 4. They were at a disadvantage in numbers, added to the fact that they had just broken through to Element Gathering Tier and thus their power was still quite weak. If it was not for the fact that their opponents seemed to want to capture them alive, they would have long been finished. "Why won't you quickly surrender to avoid suffering too much?" one of their opponents said. There were 4 members in the other party, and all of them possessed a fierce look to them. It was obvious that they have had a lot of experience in this area, and were filled with killing intent. Lu Dong and his group made no answer, but continued to keep up their defenses. In the past, the strongest one of the group of 5 was Li Hao. It was no different now. He brandished his saber repeatedly, every wave undaunted by the gap in power between the 2 groups. Each slash of his saber had an air of determination to it. It was also thanks to his presence that the group of 5 managed to hold on until now. Yet he had also attracted the concentrated attention of 2 of their opponents. Pu Piyu, with 2 powerful blows, 2 wounds appeared on his chest and back respectively, and blood splattered. Li Hao gave a loud roar and his eyes turned blood red, revealing an increasingly maniacal air, as if there was something about to explode from within him. Ling Han could not help exclaiming softly in surprise. "What is it?" Lu Yu Tong asked. A battle at this level naturally did not deserve her full attention. "That guy is really quite talented, he's almost able to form saber chi," Ling Han said, pointing at Li Hao. "Saber chi?" Lu Yu Tong could not help being shocked. Whatever chi it was, this kind of power was very difficult to form. However, it was common sense for many elite martial artists that under extreme emotional pressure, it would be much easier to form chi. For example, extreme joy or grief, or perhaps endless slaughter, or maybe the depths of despair. However, she had always possessed an icy demeanor, so she had never experienced such extremes of the emotional spectrum. As a result, she has not managed to form sword chi. According to her knowledge, That elder in her clan had managed to form sword chi due to the great grief he experienced after his wife had died of an illness. Now Li Hao had actually reached the point where he was close to forming saber chi. So how could she not be both shocked and envious? Ling Han smiled and said, "You don't have to be discouraged. With my careful guidance, you too will very quickly be able to form sword chi. This isn't anything difficult." To him, the difficulty was in forming sword ray, while grasping sword heart was the real challenge. "Isn't anything difficult?" Lu Yutong almost rolled her eyes in response. In the whole of Rain Country, how many people had actually managed to form chi? Even in her Lu clan, there were only 7 clansmen who had managed such a feat. Ling Han smiled. This girl naturally had no idea how colossal the East Star was. The strongest warriors of Rain Country were possibly only in Flower Blossom tier. Rain Country could be considered a backwater place. In the wider world, there were innumerable geniuses. There would definitely be no small number of those who had managed to form ray, and even heart. "Are you not going to help them?" Lu Yutong could not hold back from asking. This is that guy's rare opportunity. If he is unable to form saber chi through this experience, then the next time he gets this kind of chance will be maybe 5 years, or even 10 years later, Ling Han said, shaking his head. Let him face a bit more pressure. Lu Yutong frowned slightly. She did not have such an optimistic opinion of Li Hao. It was possible for him to be killed at any moment under the violent, relentless attacks of the enemies rather than form saber chi. Don't underestimate the will and determination of human beings. Under extreme pressure, there is a possibility one will erupt with inconceivable power. Ling Han smiled. He could not help remembering that in his last life, he had really been overprotected. Concocting and taking medicine allowed him to easily progress through the tiers. It was when he started to travel all over the world in search of ancient sites that he realized that he had such a weak grasp of his own actual battle prowess. The dangers and perils of all the ancient sites he visited also managed to forge his strong determination and willpower, as well as increase his combat experience. It was only from then onwards that he could really be considered as a powerful warrior. Shwa! A bright flash of the saber streaked across the air, as if proving Ling Han's words. Li Hao, who had initially been forced into a dangerous corner, actually displayed a surprising saber skill. What was even more surprising was that there was actually an accompanying flash at the same time the saber was brandished. It looked as if he had brandished 2 sabers at the same time. He had not brandished 2 sabers. The second flash of saber was saber chi. Pooh! None of those fighting could have imagined that Li Hao would have been able to display a flash of saber chi. One of his opponents had received the blow, and as the saber chi streaked across, blood immediately spilled from a wound on the other's left shoulder. Chapter 47. Clues. Good. The morale of Lu Dong and the other 3 was uplifted by this strike. Yet Li Hao's figure staggered. His origin power had long neared the point of complete exhaustion. This last slash was, in reality, merely his despair and rage he unleashed. He had never imagined that he would actually form saber chi in this attack. But he was no longer able to continue the battle. His right hand dropped to his side, and the saber almost slipped from his fingers. Boss, this brat can actually form saber chi. We definitely can't let him live. One of the enemies immediately shouted. The boss of these 4 people was a large man with deep brows who had 2 missing fingers on his left hand. He nodded and said, "This brat will become a big trouble for us in future. Just kill him then. We'll just have less money to extort." Hee. Just add a little bit more extortion money for the other 4 cash cows. It should be enough to cover for this guy's share. Maybe his corpse would be worth a few coins. The 4 of them talked amongst themselves. Although they had initially been shocked by the flash of saber chi Li Hao had revealed, they very quickly regained their composure. After all, in this battle, they possessed an absolute advantage in terms of power. "Flee, I'll cover your retreat, guys," Li Hao said deeply, using all his strength to raise the saber he was still holding. His gaze determined. Tisk. The power of love is truly great, Ling Han clicked his tongue in praise. From their previous encounter, he could already tell that Li Hao liked Xueqi. The reason he had been able to form a flash of saber chi just now, it likely was because he was worried that the object of his feelings would be hurt and suffer, leading to an extreme emotional upheaval.
Of course, extreme emotional upheavals were not a requirement for forming qi. However, under such conditions, humans are often able to fully realize their potential. Thus some who had enough talent would be able to form qi.
Now, can you make your move?
Lu Yutong rolled her eyes at him again. She kept feeling that this guy's actions were always much too mature, not a bit like those of a typical 16-year-old. Ling Han gave a long whistle and leaped out.
Ling Han.
When Lu Dong and his group saw him, their expressions were first of joy, yet quickly followed by disappointment. It was because, during their past encounter, Ling Han had only been in the 7th layer of body refining tier. From then until now, only 2 months had passed. How could it be possible that Ling Han had broken through to element gathering tier within a brief 2 months period?
If that was so, then even if he was now in the 9th layer of body refining tier, he would still be unable to battle with a martial artist in the 1st layer of element gathering tier on even terms.
This was the ironclad rule of martial arts. They looked around once again, hoping to discover another's figure. Lu Yutong was an elite martial artist in the 9th layer of element gathering tier. If she was here, then they'd all be saved.
AI. Ling Han gave a deliberate sigh and said, "The looks on your faces now make me very sad. Brat, who do you think you are?"
The enemy's boss that had missing fingers shouted at Ling Han. His gaze was wavering as he did not know Ling Han's prowess, but judging from the fact that Ling Han only seemed to be about 16 or 17 years old, there was no way that he would be too powerful, right? "I'm Ling Han, son of the Ling clan's clan head from Grey Cloud Town." Ling Han introduced himself.
"Boss, we've got another cash cow here,"
one of the lackeys said. The boss with missing fingers laughed wickedly.
In his opinion, Ling Han had to be one of those spoiled young masters who had an exaggerated idea of their own abilities and no idea of the perils of the real world.
Thinking in this manner, he naturally would not take Ling Han seriously, and said, "You brat are really quite nice to especially deliver money to us. Why don't you quickly come here and surrender obediently?"
Ha 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 ha.
His group of 4 laughed raucously.
Ling Han was all smiles and said, "I don't think the 4 of you are nice at all. Why don't you obediently extend your necks and I'll gift each one of you with a slash?"
What a self-important brat. The kind of person I hate the most is this type of spoiled young master. One of the lackeys pounced at Ling Han while brandishing a large cleaver in a slash aimed at Ling Han's head. "Old 4, don't be too merciless, that's a cash cow there," the boss with missing fingers reminded.
"Hee, I'm just going to cut off this brat's arms," Old 4 said, and when the large cleaver lowered, the blade came down at a slight angle and indeed, it was aiming at Ling Han's arm.
Ling Han drew his sword.
"Xiao," the sword flashed, and the cleaver flew high up into the air while that man called Old 4 was also forced to fly backwards due to the shockwave from Ling Han's parry. But he had just flown back some distance when his head separated from his neck, and a gushing stream of hot blood sprayed out.
"What?" Seeing this, the other 3 bandits were dumbstruck. Lu Dong and his group were also shocked numb. Was this really Ling Han? 2 months ago, this guy was just in the 7th layer of body refining tier, yet now? That Old 4 had to be at least in the 2nd layer, or even 3rd, of element gathering tier and his individual strength could overwhelm them easily. Yet he was killed in one strike by Ling Han. What kind of disparity was that?
Since Ling Han had drawn his sword, there was no way he would be merciful.
His figure moved sharply and charged towards the boss with missing fingers and his 2 other fellows. Old 4 must have been too careless. That's right, he's just a little brat. How strong could he be?
Let's kill him to avenge Old 4.
The 3 of them pounced while brandishing their respective weapons, and as their blades waved about wildly, they created a big commotion. Unfortunately, in front of Ling Han, they were all much too weak. Out of the group of 3, aside from their boss with missing fingers who was in the 3rd layer of element gathering tier, the other 2 were both in the 2nd layer. In front of Ling Han, whose prowess was comparable to that of a martial artist in the 5th layer of element gathering tier, what could they do? This was the constraint of a difference in stages.
Any martial artist would know very well how big the gulf between the power of one stage and the next one was.
Ling Han didn't even have to use sword qi. He did not need to use shocking electricity sword arts either. Taking all opportunities provided by the gaps in their defenses, shwa shwa shwa, he instantly killed them, 1 bandit with each strike. The boss with missing fingers didn't even get a chance to beg for mercy before the whole group was completely obliterated by Ling Han. Lu Dong and his group felt like they were dreaming.
They exhausted all means available and only managed to survive for over half a day against the boss with missing fingers and his lackeys. And that was mostly due to the fact that they had wanted to capture Lu Dong and his group alive for extortion.
But what did Ling Han do? He killed them, one enemy with one strike, as if it was a piece of cake.
In the past, there indeed had already been a gap between their battle prowess, but how could it have become so colossal?
Ling Han, no, Big Brother Ling, thank you.
It's really thanks to you, otherwise, we would have been in deep trouble.
They were stunned for a moment before hurriedly gathering around Ling Han to thank him. Ling Han smiled and exchanged pleasantries with them. Lu Yutong also came out from behind the bushes, and the atmosphere quickly became lively.
Why are you guys here?
Ling Han asked. This Seven Wind Mountains was extremely dangerous. If it wasn't for the fact that there was earth dragon grass and a red-scaled dragon snake here, he wouldn't even consider coming to this place. After all, who could guarantee that the demonic beasts in spiritual ocean tier wouldn't suddenly feel like taking a walk around the territories of weak demonic beasts?
The Da Yuan tournament is going to begin very soon, and so we wanted to do as much as we could to increase our individual abilities.
We came here to see if we might be lucky enough to pick some spiritual medicine growing all over the place here, Chen Pengju said.
Ling Han could not hold back a loud laugh and said, "Are you guys perhaps thinking that just because you discovered a plant of green spiritual fruits back at Balance Mountain, the heavens are looking favorably on you and you'd also be able to get a large haul here?"
Lu Dong and his group looked embarrassed. Xueqi pouted and said, "Don't remind us. We are really very unlucky this time.
Not only did we not find any spiritual medicine, we had even accidentally fallen into a cave that had heavy yin qi. There were bones, human and animal alike, littered all over the place."
Ling Han started.
It couldn't be that these 5 guys had coincidentally fallen into the cave the red-scaled dragon snake inhabited, right? If that was true, then their luck was indeed extraordinarily good.
Chapter 48. Den of the Great Snake.
Where is that cave?
Ling Han asked.
Wait, you want to go to that demonic place?
Lu Dong immediately shouted.
Ling Han smiled softly and said, "Aren't you guys here to search for a fateful encounter?
There could be one at that place." "Oh, that's right. You guys probably didn't venture too deeply into that cave, right?"
"Of course not. There were bones all over the place.
It looked like a mass grave.
Once we saw it, we fled. As a girl, Xueqi naturally need not fear that saying such words would make Ling Han laugh at them."
"You guys are really fortunate," Ling Han nodded.
Had these guys been even slightly more curious and ventured deeper into the cave to see what kind of creature had devoured these people and animals, they would have very likely never come out.
"Is there really a great opportunity there?" Chen Pengju asked a bit expectantly. Currently, only he and Zhou Chong had not yet broken through to element gathering tier.
"Possibly," Ling Han nodded. "That cave could be the lair of the red-scaled dragon snake, or possibly some other kind of savage demonic beast. As he had not yet seen it with his own eyes, it was difficult to make an accurate guess. When he saw the eagerness displayed on the faces of the 5 of them, he said, "However, great opportunities usually go hand in hand with great danger.
You guys need to think it over carefully."
The 4 of them exchanged looks and after a while they finally said, "We'll at least take you to that cave for now." The group set off on their path, and Ling Han said to Li Hao, "Congratulations, now that you've formed Saber Chi, you can be considered to have finally stepped onto the first step of the path of a saber wielder."
Saber Chi.
When Ling Han said this, Lu Dong and the others were reminded that Li Hao's last attack had actually managed to form a flash of saber chi. Lu Dong, Chen Pengju and Zhou Chong were uncontrollably envious, while Zhu Shuiyi's face was filled with joy.
Li Hao laughed in a simple manner.
Before he had even begun his path of cultivation, he had already been practicing saber skills. He had immersed himself in the path of the saber for 13 years, and his deepest desire was to be able to form saber chi.
Unfortunately, he had never managed to do so.
He had never thought that this would have been a blessing in disguise, allowing him to form saber chi in such dangerous circumstances. From now onwards, his path of martial arts would definitely be bright beyond imagination. It could even be said that even if he went to Huyang Academy and showed off his saber chi there, he'd definitely be gladly welcomed as a disciple. "Big Brother Ling, let's have a spar." Li Hao could not help feeling his fighting spirit rise. However,
you're not allowed to use your full abilities. Otherwise, your power would be much too strong. Ling Han neither agreed nor rejected. He simply drew his sword and gave it a light wave. Shua, 2 flashes of sword qi appeared in a dance. Li Hao instantly opened his mouth in a daze. After a while, he finally shook his head and said, "I'll never compare myself with a freak like you again." "That's right, this guy is a true freak. To compare yourself with him is practically looking for trouble," Lu Dong and the other 3 said respectively, all of them completely convinced by Ling Han's absolute prowess. Yet Ling Han was not so easily satisfied. Sword Qi was only the first step on the path of the sword. There was still Sword Ray and Sword Heart after that. In his last life, out of the 7 ultimate warriors of Heaven tier, one of them had been the most esteemed existence of sword arts. He began practicing with the sword at 7 years old, forming Sword Qi at 10, forming Sword Heart when he was 17, and finally forming Sword Heart at the age of 33. He was truly a grandmaster of sword arts. His first life was done and over with. He had placed all his attention on the path of alchemy, and became an alchemy emperor, someone who had never appeared in the books of history and likely never would again. He was a competitive man. Since he had already decided to concentrate on the path of martial arts in this life, then he wanted to also become a true emperor of martial arts. De Yuan City was too small, and Rain Country itself was also too small. Thus even those who had only managed to form sword or saber qi would be praised as exceptional geniuses. They were not too far away from that cave. Thus, after half an hour, they arrived at the face of a cliff, which was covered with damp moss. Because the cliff was facing away from light, they appeared to look dark green in color. "It's there," Xueqi said, pointing at one corner of the cliff. Ling Han glanced over and saw that there was a very inconspicuous cave entrance there. If Xueqi had not deliberately pointed it out to him, he would have definitely missed it. "You guys wait here, I'll go take a look." He took a great leap and entered into the cave. The environment here was extremely damp, and the ground slippery. If he wasn't careful, he might slip and slide all the way to the bottom of the cave. He cautiously advanced, observing his surroundings carefully and paying attention to any traces or clues. Soon he arrived at the bottom of the cave and discovered a gigantic cavern. There were bones everywhere, and just as Xueqi had described, they were bones of both humans and demonic beasts. They were giving out a rotting stench. If anyone else had seen such a scene, he'd probably turn right around and flee back to wherever he came from. Ling Han searched carefully and soon, among the pile of bones, discovered a crimson scale. It's indeed the red scale dragon snake. He could finally confirm it. He began searching again and eventually discovered a passage at one of the corners of the cavern. The passage's ceiling was only as tall as a normal man's height, and it was also only wide enough to permit one person to enter at a time. A more powerful rotting stench was continuously wafting from within it. That big guy should be sleeping inside. Ling Han took a look at the scale in his hand. Judging from its size, it definitely came from a mature red-scale dragon snake. He bent it, but the scale did not split in half. Indeed, red-scaled dragon snake has a thread of dragon blood in their line. That's why their scales would be so tough. Otherwise, demonic beasts in element gathering tier definitely could not possess such a powerful defense. He retreated out of the cave, brought Lu Dong and the others to a place farther away and said, "That cave is the lair of the red-scaled dragon snake." Red-scaled dragon snake. Lu Dong and his group were shocked. The red-scaled dragon snake was a demonic beast in the 9th layer of element gathering tier. Furthermore, it was much stronger than any ordinary demonic beast in the 9th layer of element gathering tier. It definitely deserved the name of the Beast King amongst demonic beasts of element gathering tier. The inner core of the dragon snake can be used to concoct transcending origin pill. One pill will allow the user to increase his own cultivation level by 1 layer. However, it is only effective for martial artists whose cultivation levels is below the 4th layer of element gathering tier. Ling Han revealed the benefits first, then he said, "How about it? Do you guys still want to continue?" Lu Dong and his group all looked hesitant. On one hand, they all craved for greater power, but on the other hand, the red-scaled dragon snake was not an easy opponent. If they weren't careful, they not only wouldn't be able to obtain the beast's inner core, but also become the prey of the great snake, and their bones would join the ever-increasing pile in the cave. Ling Han only looked at them with a soft smile. In truth, since he dared to venture here,
Then of course he was certain of his ability to handle the red-scaled dragon snake.
This was his test for the 5 of them. Because these 5 people had led him to the lair of the red-scaled dragon snake, he wanted to reward them with a big gift. However, this would depend on whether or not they had the courage to obtain this opportunity. The expressions on the 5 of them very quickly turned into determined looks, and they said, "Let's do it. If we can manage to reach the 4th layer of element gathering tier, then we would have a chance of squeezing into the top 10 participants of the tournament at the end of the year. We'd be able to enter Huyang Academy then. We have to take the risk." Ling Han nodded and said, "No regrets? We definitely will not regret it." The 5 of them said loudly in unison. "All right, then here's a mission for you. Go catch a bright wool sheep and bring it here," Ling Han said. Bright wool sheep? Lu Dong and the rest stared blankly. Bright wool sheep was only a demonic beast of body refining tier, and there was nothing special about it. What did Ling Han want such a creature for? Ling Han smiled and said, "Bright wool sheep is the favorite food of the red-scaled dragon snake." Chen Pengju had not yet reached the conclusion. He dimly asked, "Why do we have to feed that great snake?" "Stupid." Xueqi immediately knocked him on the head. "If we place some kind of drug in the body of the bright wool sheep, then wouldn't it end up in the stomach of that great snake?" "Oh, that's right." Chen Pengju scratched his head. His suddenly enlightened expression caused everyone else to laugh loudly. Chapter 49. Battling the Dragon Snake. Everyone proceeded to carry out their assigned tasks. Lu Dong and his group went off to hunt the bright wool sheep while Ling Han took out a variety of medicinal ingredients, preparing to concoct a particular drug. It was only an alchemy emperor like Ling Han who could handle medicinal ingredients well enough to be able to concoct a drug targeted specifically against a particular creature. The drug he was concocting now could be considered harmless to any other living creature, but for the red-scaled dragon snake alone, it was deadly. In many situations, alchemists were also poison masters. For example, the little poison lord, Yu Zheng. However, his ability was far, far beneath Ling Han's. Although the bright wool sheep was not a powerful demonic beast, its flesh was extremely delicious. It was not only the favorite prey of many other demonic beasts, it was also considered a delicacy for human beings. As a result, their population in the area dwindled. It was not an easy matter to actually find one. After a whole 3 days had passed, Lu Dong and his group finally returned. Chen Pengju was carrying a creature that looked like a mountain goat on his back. It had a gorgeous woolen coat that looked like the finest brocade. They had finally captured a bright wool sheep. Ling Han fed the drug he had concocted to the bright wool sheep before making a gash on one of its legs. He then threw it into the lair of the red-scaled dragon snake. The great snake's sense of smell was quite powerful. The smell of blood would definitely cause it to wake up from its deep slumber, and since the bright wool sheep was its favorite food, it wouldn't be able to hold back from coming out to enjoy another big meal even if it was already full. Why did they have to use a living prey? That's because each red-scaled dragon snake was very cautious by nature. Unless the prey was something it had killed itself, it would definitely not eat it. After Ling Han came out of the cavern, he retreated with others some distance away. They hid behind a boulder nearby so that the great snake wouldn't discover their presence once it came out of the cavern. Not long after, they felt the ground tremble beneath them, as if some colossal beast was going berserk nearby. It was the red-scaled dragon snake. Pang! A gigantic red-colored snake weaved out of the cavern's entrance as if it was an arrow shot from a bow. Its diameter was bigger than that of a bucket, and it was also extremely long. Whatever they could see of its body was already pushing close to 100 meters, yet there was still no sign of the end of its tail. There were 2 fine membranes protruding from the great snake's neck. Currently, the 2 membranes were trembling, producing a weird woo-woo-woo sound. Finally, the entire body of the great snake was out. Its total length was about 200 meters and its whole body was covered with crimson scales. Each scale was about the size of a bowl's lid. It seemed to have gone mad and was continuously ramming into obstructions in all directions. Its long tail was like a whip, shattering many of the surrounding boulders in the course of its rampage. How come that thing's not dead from the poison yet? Lu Dong and his group gasped in shock. They were completely unable to comprehend it. Da! That's a demonic beast in the 9th layer of element gathering tier. Moreover, it has inherited a shred of the dragon's bloodline,
and has been acclaimed as a ruler among demonic beasts of the tier.
How could it die so easily? Ling Han said, shaking his head.
If it was that simple to kill it, he would not have needed to wait until he had reached the peak period of the first layer of element gathering tier to come here.
Oh no, it's noticed us.
That great snake had a very strong sense of smell, so even if Ling Han and the others had concealed themselves in a spot downwind of it, the snake had still discovered their presence. It immediately weaved its gigantic body and charged towards them.
Sisi!
The great serpent's tongue flickered, and the two membranes at the sides of its neck trembled, producing a weird sound.
A rotting stench wafted over.
Yutong, let's join forces, we need to detain it.
Ling Han did not feel fear at all.
He simply drew his sword and threw himself forward.
Lu Yutong did not respond. She simply followed Ling Han closely, and for the first time, drew her weapon of choice. She was also a sword user.
The two of them worked together with their swords brandished in a dance, aimed at the red-scaled dragon snake. Theoretically speaking, Lu Yutong had also achieved the 9th layer of element gathering tier, so she should not be at a disadvantage in terms of power when facing this great snake. However, the red-scaled dragon snake possessed a thread of the dragon's bloodline, so whether in terms of brute power or defense, it was still stronger than any other being at the 9th layer of element gathering tier.
Even Lu Yutong was not qualified to battle it head-on.
It was a ruler of this cultivation tier, and only other rulers of the tier possessed the ability to battle it one-on-one. Ling Han possessed the 5-element origin nuclei and his power similarly exceeded those of the same cultivation level, so he did have a right to the name, ruler. The problem was that his current cultivation level was still too low. Even if the two of them were working together, they were still forced to jump and dodge in all directions, proving the great power this serpent possessed.
Be patient, it's already poisoned, so it can't hold on for much longer. But we definitely can't allow it to flee, Ling Han said.
In.
Lu Yutong nodded.
Ling Han used all his abilities, and every wave of his sword would form 4 flashes of sword chi. Pu, 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 pu. 4 wounds appeared on the body of the red-scaled dragon snake. On the other hand, his actual sword itself didn't even manage to penetrate the scales of the great snake. This was the power of sword chi, and this was also why it was something that every self-respecting swordsman would revere greatly. And when they saw the 4 flashes of sword chi Ling Han had just displayed, Lu Dong and his group were completely stunned, their mouths agape. They were absolutely speechless.
However, the great snake's counterattack was also extremely swift and fierce.
Its tail whipped and the shattered rocks shot out at a terrifying force, causing bloody spots to continuously appear on Ling Han's body.
Ling Han didn't even make a single sound of pain at this. On the contrary, he started to stimulate Lone Wolf's blood within his body.
Wang, the 5 elements origin nuclei within his dantian began rotating at a greater speed, causing his power to increase. At the same time, the circulation of the indestructible heaven scroll allowed his wounds to begin recovering at an extremely rapid rate. The circulation of these 2 different techniques, along with the fierce battle he was now in, caused the origin power within Ling Han's body to be consumed at a very fast rate. For any other person to battle at his full strength, he might be able to last for about half an hour, but for Ling Han, 10 minutes was already his limit. But, he had already long anticipated this situation, and so prepared a large number of medium-level return origin pills for himself. Should he start feeling that his origin power was flowing out, he'd take one of the pills. There shouldn't be any problem for him to continue battling for about 20 minutes with his current supply of pills. They had to detain the great snake by all means, for he had concocted the drug to especially aim at the red-scaled dragon snake. The serpent had a yin nature, so he had prepared a large store of medicinal ingredients that possessed a yang nature or were of fire alignment, causing yin and yang within the snake's body to conflict, damaging the life force of the red-scaled dragon snake. But it was also very easy to cure this poison. As long as it dived into a river, using the water to extinguish the flames raging within its body, it'd be able to completely recover after 3 or 4 days by simply resting. Under the influence of its instincts, the red-scaled dragon snake would definitely go off in search of water, so they needed to stop it here by all means. If it wasn't for this, Ling Han would have had the whole group hide somewhere further away and wait for the red-scaled dragon snake to die before returning to collect their rewards. After the battle had persisted for a while, the great snake's initial rage passed and it became restless instead. It felt as if an inferno was raging within its body,
causing it to feel the pressure of death closing in. It no longer attacked fiercely, but its head turned around instead, intending to flee. "Where do you think you're going?" Ling Han quickly waved his sword in a slash. He had entered 7 wind mountains, firstly for the earth dragon grass, and secondly, for the inner core of this great serpent, so that he'd be able to concoct the transcending origin pill. If he wanted to advance his cultivation level in a short period of time, he needed to depend on the external support of this medicinal pill. Pa! The great serpent gave a wave of its tail, creating a terrifying shockwave. Although its tail had not directly hit Ling Han, the shockwave produced caused Ling Han to fly backwards. The 9th layer of element gathering tier was indeed powerful. Ling Han felt rueful. The higher the cultivation level, the more difficult it was to skip cultivation levels when challenging someone. Element gathering tier was still fine, but once he reached gushing spring tier, even the difference of 1 layer would be an immeasurable gulf. If he, with a cultivation level of the 1st layer of gushing spring tier, battled against an opponent in the 9th layer of gushing spring tier, he'd be instantly obliterated in one move. There was no way he'd be able to prolong the battle for even slightly longer. Lu Yutong produced a light whistle as her long sword freely waved like rain, and a high-level yellow-grade sword arts unfolded. Her attack was like rain, and effectively parried the red-scaled dragon snake's blow. Chapter 50. A Breathtaking Sword. Ling Han and Lu Yutong had already started taking pills like mad. The pills Ling Han had been taking helped him replenish his origin power, while the ones Lu Yutong had been taking were meant to speed up the recovery of wounds. A head-on clash with this kind of demonic beast was practically seeking death, and she had already sustained considerable internal injuries within a few short minutes of battle. Thankfully, the pills Ling Han concocted were of excellent quality, and allowed her to maintain her battle prowess at her best condition. Furthermore, because of Lone Wolf's blood, her battle prowess was still on a soaring rise. Ling Han had taught it to her some time ago. With the increasing battle prowess she possessed further enhanced by the circulation of the Lone Wolf's blood, Lu Yutong could just about handle a head-on clash with the red-scaled dragon snake. If the red-scaled dragon snake had not been poisoned, then the losers of this battle would definitely be Ling Han and Lu Yutong. But things were different now. They only needed to hold on for 20 minutes. As the battle persisted, the red-scaled dragon snake became more and more frantic. The conflict between the yin and the yang in its body was becoming even more intense, and there were already many places on its body that had exploded. Green-colored blood splattered everywhere. It had a corrosive nature. Falling on the rocks littered around, the blood actually melted the rocks at an extremely quick pace. There was also poisonous gas floating around in the air that could easily poison and kill a martial artist in the 9th layer of element gathering tier. If it did not possess such awe-inspiring abilities, how could it be labeled the ruler of element gathering tier? Rulers were, of course, invincible. Unfortunately, it had encountered Ling Han. Ling Han and Lu Yutong had already taken antidotes, and the powerful poison only caused them to feel slightly dizzy, not having too much effect on their battle prowess. Sisi! The red-scaled dragon snake could feel death approaching and began to attempt to flee recklessly. In its eyes, it only needed to solve the problem within its body, and then dealing with these 2 insignificant human beings would be a cinch. Lu Yutong was enraged too. She brandished her long sword like she was holding a rainbow in her hand, as if she was a battle goddess displaying her heroic beauty. The great serpent did its utmost to flee, while Ling Han and Lu Yutong did their utmost to stop it from fleeing. If they missed this chance, the red-scaled dragon snake would definitely not be fooled next time, and they'd have to wait until Lu Yutong broke through to gushing spring tier before coming again. A large river appeared some distance ahead. The red-scaled dragon snake seemed to understand that the river's water would cure its poison and instantly became energetic, increasing the speed of its escape. Even if it suffered attacks from Lu Yutong, it did not attempt to counterattack even once. It seemed to have made its decision to do its utmost to slip into the river. A flash of absolute determination crossed Lu Yutong's eyes as she raised her sword high up and lightly shouted, "One sword of heaven's martial arts determines the universe." Xiao! She waved her sword, and it was almost as if wielder and sword were as one, slashing towards the neck of the red-scaled dragon snake. Ling Han's expression changed and he shouted loudly, "Don't be reckless." This slash was much too powerful and the red-scaled dragon snake dared not receive it head-on. Otherwise, it was highly likely that the great serpent would be killed by this one slash. It gave a loud hiss,
and the serpent's body quickly coiled in place, concealing its head within its coiled body to protect it.
Pooh!
The long sword lowered quickly in a slash, and a flash of sword chi was revealed, which actually chopped the body of the red-scaled dragon snake in two. Green blood instantly gushed out like a spring. The great serpent twisted all over the ground in agony. Close to 1/3 of its body near to its tail had actually been chopped off by this sword slash of Lu Yutong.
Pa!
Lu Yutong's delicate figure wavered, and she fell down towards the ground.
Ling Han quickly leaped up to catch the icy beauty before she hit the ground.
He frowned and said, "Are you crazy?
You actually forcibly squeezed your origin nucleus to increase your own battle prowess. If it exploded, you'd lose your life. I managed to form sword chi. Did you see I formed sword chi?" Lu Yutong said weakly, but excitedly.
At that moment, there was only one thought in her head, and that was to obstruct the red-scaled dragon snake.
She could not disappoint Ling Han. With the support of this conviction, she actually broke through her own limits and managed to form sword chi.
"You silly girl, if you dare to do something like this again, I'll smack your behind."
Ling Han lifted Lu Yutong onto his back.
The red-scaled dragon snake's energy was now close to being completely spent.
Although the river was not too far away, it could no longer reach it. A red flush appeared on Lu Yutong's beautiful cold face, but she plastered her face onto Ling Han's back.
Hearing the strong beating of his heart, her mind was empty of any stray thoughts. The red-scaled dragon snake was still twisting around on the ground, yet the extent of its movements was becoming smaller and smaller. Finally, it no longer made any movements.
Yet Ling Han did not make any impulsive moves. A centipede dies but never falls down, and the serpent was extremely long. Moreover, this red-scaled dragon snake was considered within the ranks of kings.
"Big Brother Ling."
Lu Dong and his group raced over.
Their faces were filled with astonishment, and when they looked at Ling Han, it was as if they were looking at some kind of monster.
How could they not be astonished? Although the red-scaled dragon snake had been poisoned, its battle prowess had not weakened. Ling Han actually managed to battle with it for such a long time. Even if the main attacking force had been Lu Yutong, this was still an unbelievable feat.
If it had been them in his place, one whip of the great serpent's tail would probably be enough to make them all die in one go.
"Is Miss Lu all right?" they asked. "She should be all right," Ling Han smiled.
With an alchemy emperor like him nearby, as long as she still had one breath within her, there was no way she would die. He was just about to have Lu Dong and his group watch over her and the serpent while he enters the cavern to pluck the earth dragon grass when he suddenly spotted a few people coming out from the bushes on the river's banks. There were 6 people in total, and the one in the lead was a young man. The others were 5 men dressed all in black and seemed to be of different ages. From the looks of it, they were the lackeys of the young man.
"Ha ha ha ha, it's an actual red-scaled dragon snake."
The young man rubbed his hands and laughed loudly. "That's why I said we should come over here and check things out when we heard the commotion.
We actually encountered such a good thing.
Young master's good fortune is as high as the sky,"
the 5 men in black said in unison, showing off their abilities of currying favor.
"Quickly carry this great serpent back for me. I'll let grandfather see how great I am,"
the young man immediately commanded.
"Understood."
The 5 men in black walked towards where the red-scaled dragon snake was lying.
The 6 of them were speaking amongst themselves as if they had completely not seen that Ling Han and the others were also here.
"Hey, we were the ones who killed that red-scaled dragon snake." Xueqi shouted loudly in anger. Li Hao had already drawn his saber, preparing to step forwards to stop them. Yet Ling Han raised one hand to stop him from advancing further, and said, smiling, "You don't have to do anything." Li Hao and the others couldn't understand him. Could it be that Ling Han really intended to surrender the red-scaled dragon snake just like that? But Ling Han did not seem at all as if he was that kind of person.
Previously, even though he had known Hang Zhan had been the grandson of the 7th elder of Stone Wolf sect, he had still done as he had said and killed the man.
His brow hadn't even twitched back then.
When the young man on the other side saw this, his face was filled with an expression that told them this was something common to him.
Because of his identity, it was absolutely normal for other groups to yield to him. Yet it was at this very moment that the situation changed drastically. The red-scaled dragon snake that seemed to have completely died actually coiled up.
Its head shot out and bit one of the men in black, snapping him in half, whilst its body coiled and constrained the other four tightly.
This was its final attack before death.
As it gathered all its remaining strength to carry it out, it was extremely powerful. Ka ka ka, the sound of bones shattering continued for a long time. The four people who had been trapped in the snake's coiled body were instantly squeezed into a lump of flesh and blood, which had all mixed together into an indefinable lump. There was no way to identify who was who now. Meanwhile, the man the great serpent had bitten in half was only left with two legs that walked a few steps in different directions before they fell down with a paw. Pa! The red-scaled dragon snake once again lay down on the ground, and this time, it was finally dead. Chapter 51. The third young master of the Foam clan. It was but a single instant, yet 5 elites of element gathering tier were all killed. Such was the might of the red-scaled dragon snake. The young man was so scared that his face had turned completely white and his whole body started shaking. He was not a genius of martial arts, and such a bloody scene caused him to almost throw up his bile. This caused Lu Dong and the others to break out into uncontrollable laughter. Compared with him, Lu Dong and his group were frequent visitors of various perilous and hazardous areas. There was a considerable number of martial artists and demonic beasts that have died by their hands. When the young man heard their mocking laughter, his face twisted and pointing at them, he asked, "You dare to laugh at me? What about it?" "Hang, since my servants have all died, then you guys will be responsible for hauling this great serpent back for me," the young man commanded. Lu Dong and the others exchanged looks, wondering if there was something wrong with this guy's head. "How dare you? I am the third young master of the Foam clan of Deyuan City, Feng Luo, and my elder brother is Feng Yen, a true disciple of the Huyang Academy." The young man screamed. "Foam clan." Lu Dong and his group revealed expressions of dread. While they were all members of the younger generation of the great clans of Guorok Town, how could they be compared with the great clans of Deyuan City? These great clans all had powerful warriors of Gushing Spring tier to watch over the clan, and were definitely no weaker than the Stone Wolf sect. Moreover, the elder brother of this Feng Luo was actually a true disciple of Huyang Academy, and that was really a terrifying fact. Huyang Academy was the assembly point of all the young geniuses of Rain Country, and the top 100 disciples all had a high chance of becoming powerful warriors of the spiritual ocean tier. Not to mention, what were true disciples? True disciples were the top 30 disciples of the academy. In their case, cultivating up to spiritual ocean tier was practically guaranteed. To oppose someone who would become a powerful warrior of the spiritual ocean tier in future. Who on earth would not feel fear in this kind of situation? Is this Feng Yen very powerful? Ling Han turned to Lu Yutong and asked. Very powerful. Lu Yutong nodded, her beautiful face revealing a serious expression. I heard that Feng Yen just broke through to Gushing Spring tier 3 years ago, and he was 20 years old at the time. Now, he is already at the peak period of the 3rd layer of Gushing Spring tier, and chances are high that he would advance further in a very short period of time. Additionally, he's already succeeded in forming Saber Chi, and though it's unknown how many flashes he can form, it's definitely not less than 3 flashes. That was a shocking rate of progress. For an ordinary martial artist in Gushing Spring tier, it was already a very impressive feat to be able to advance 1 layer within 5 years. There were some that have spent 10 years and only managed to reach the next period, and for them, they would never be able to breach the high fence surrounding the 4th layer in their whole lives. Before a martial artist reached Flower Blossom tier, he would only have a lifespan of 100 years. As a result, if he wasted too much time on such a low-level tier like Gushing Spring tier, then his future prospects would naturally be limited. Feng Yen spent 3 years and managed to break through by 3 layers. If he maintained this kind of progression rate, then he'd be able to break through to spiritual ocean tier by the time he's over 30 years old, and possibly by the time he's 60 or 70 years old, he may even be able to advance 1 step further and break through to spiritual pedestal tier. At that moment, he deserved to be praised as a royal existence of Rain Country, because the strongest warriors in Rain Country publicly known were only in spiritual pedestal tier, though there were rumors that there was an ancient freak who was even stronger and was the overseer of Rain Country who kept the country from falling. With such a calculation, Feng Yan's potential for greatness could be imagined. No wonder Feng Luo was so arrogant. Oh, Ling Han casually replied. He naturally did not think of Feng Yan as any kind of serious threat. He patted Lu Yutong's shoulder, smiled and said, I guarantee that you will become stronger than him. Lu Yutong nodded.
She had full confidence in Ling Han and in herself.
The cultivation technique she was practicing now was a heaven-grade cultivation technique, and together with her high-level heaven-grade spirit base, she did not lose to anyone in terms of inborn circumstances. Of course, there was no way she could compare to a freak like Ling Han. She did not know that there was still such a thing as a mortal-grade spirit base in this world, and had no idea that Ling Han was actually an alchemy emperor. By his side, she could completely become a pill bottle, relax in comfort and watch as her cultivation level kept climbing. "Did you hear what I said? Quickly haul this red-scaled dragon snake back for me," Feng Luo said, extremely pleased with himself. Based on his past experience, as long as he announced his elder brother's name, the other party would immediately become very obedient. Ling Han shook his head and said, "I despise people like you the most." He strode towards Feng Luo. "Big brother Ling, don't be too rash," Lu Dong and his group quickly said. They were really scared that Ling Han would do something like what he had done previously, and go on a murderous rampage. "Don't worry, I just want to give him a good thrashing," Ling Han said with a smile. After all, Feng Luo only wanted to snatch their possession, and had no intention of killing anyone or any other kind of dirty thoughts. Otherwise, Ling Han would definitely not be merciful. You dare!" Feng Luo could not help stepping back. Although they shared the same mother, Feng Yan was a genius of martial arts while he himself did not have any particularly significant talent in this field. It was as if all the essence had been absorbed by Feng Yan. Feng Luo himself was now only in the 9th layer of body refining tier, and this cultivation level was likely thanks to medicinal pills he had taken. However, he still had not managed to advance further. After all, green spiritual fruits were quite rare. "So what if I dare?" Ling Han raised his leg and kicked him. Feng Luo started to howl terribly, and after Ling Han gave him a few good kicks, Feng Luo's nose was bloody and his face was swollen. If he saw his own reflection in a mirror, he probably wouldn't recognize himself anymore. He did not even dare to leave any fierce words. He simply fled with his tail behind his legs. Ling Han split open the red-scaled dragon snake and carved out its roughly fist-sized inner core. It was as red as fiery flames. Lu Dong and his group, out of curiosity, all gathered and reached out to touch it, but once their hands came into contact with it, their expressions changed and they quickly retreated, gasping for breath. Only Li Hao did not retreat, but he had also immediately withdrawn his hand, as if he had been electrified. The red-scaled dragon snake possesses a thread of dragon blood, and can claim to be a king of a tier. It is well capable of suppressing martial artists and demonic beasts of the same cultivation level. Only those who have managed to form qi can resist it, Ling Han explained. If it had not been for this, then Lu Yutong, who had also been in the 9th layer of element gathering tier, wouldn't be completely at a disadvantage in a head-on clash with the red-scaled dragon snake. It was all because she was suffering under this suppression. But if she and the great serpent battled once more now, Lu Yutong definitely would not have been in such dire straits. This was because she had now managed to form sword qi, and thus possessed the preliminary qualifications to battle the great serpent on an even footing. There were rulers of demonic beasts, and there were also rulers of human martial artists. As long as one managed to form qi, they could be considered to have begun their journey on the path towards being a tier's ruler. However, only those who have managed to form heart could proclaim themselves rulers. You guys remove the backbone of this snake. Technically, it can also be considered dragon's bones. The spinal cord is very effective in refining one's physique. Ling Han delegated the tasks to Lu Dong and his group while he and Lu Yutong once again entered the cavern. He still had to pluck the earth dragon grass, after all. Lu Dong and his group were all very excited. A strong physique meant that defense would also be upgraded. This was a real solid benefit. They immediately started working in high spirits. Ling Han and Lu Yutong entered the cavern and advanced through the hidden passage. The environment here was very damp, and because the red-scaled dragon snake had been residing here for a very long time, there was a very powerful stench of blood hovering in the air. Thankfully, the passage was not very long, and very quickly, a gigantic cave appeared in a distance ahead. Found it! Ling Han found only one plant in the middle of the cave. The plant only had a single stem, completely without any branches or leaves. The stem was not straight. Instead, it wound and twisted, seeming like a divine dragon that was craning its neck in expectation of soaring towards the heavens. Earth dragon grass.
Chapter 52. Transcending Origin Pill. Ling Han was overjoyed. This stalk of earth dragon grass was at least over 200 years old. It would not only become an ingredient for the Transcending Origin Pill, but also improve the effects of the completed pill. If this was how it was, then even if the other main ingredients he had on hand were a bit insufficient in age, this would compensate for it. He carefully dug out the earth dragon grass. As long as the main stem was undamaged, the medical effects of the earth dragon grass would not decrease. Additionally, it could also be preserved for a very, very long time. Congratulations, you are one step closer to the day of Uncle Ling's recovery, Lu Yutong said. She now also knew about how Ling Dongxing's spirit base had been crippled. Ling Han's face was filled with joy. If everything proceeded as smoothly as things had this time, then within 1, or maybe 2, years he could heal Ling Dongxing's spirit base and allow him to once again advance on the path of cultivation. The two of them came out of the cavern. While Ling Han got ready to start concocting the alchemical pill, Lu Dong and his group were boiling the bones of the red-scaled dragon snake. Aside from the inner core, the bones were the most valuable part of the great serpent. This can't be. This guy even knows how to concoct pills? When they saw Ling Han take out a very small alchemy furnace, the faces of Lu Dong and his group began twitching uncontrollably. He's really a monster. Yeah, his advancement in cultivation levels is inhumanly fast, and he's even managed to form 4 flashes of sword chi. But now, he can even concoct pills. I really don't know what else to say anymore. Forget it, let's not compare ourselves with a freak. We won't compare anymore. Never again. The 5 of them continuously shook their heads. Even Li Hao, who had managed to form a flash of saber chi, shook his head, looking like a rattledrum. To compare yourself with a freak, wasn't that just seeking your own humiliation? Ling Han's alchemy techniques were a blur to their eyes. Currently, his origin power was abundant, so he did not need to keep taking pills during the concocting process. Additionally, the eruption effects of his 5 elements origin nuclei were astonishing, allowing him to control the furnace's heat even more smoothly and easily than before. After only 1 hour, he stopped his movements. The Transcending Origin Pill, done. There were 13 pills in total. This is the Transcending Origin Pill. Taking one would allow you to advance 1 layer, Ling Han said. He took 8 pills for himself, and handed the remaining 5 over to Lu Dong and his group. Theoretically, he only needed 2 pills to reach the peak period of the 3rd layer of element gathering tier. But the effects of this Transcending Origin Pill were tailored for single-nucleus martial artists. Who knows if the 5 elements origin nuclei needed double or even more than that the amount. Thus, to avoid complications, he kept an additional 6 pills. Lu Dong and his group did not express any disagreement about Ling Han taking the lion's share of the rewards. Are you kidding? How much work had they actually done for this reward? They had only been responsible for capturing a bright wool sheep. Such an easy task. Who on earth would fail at it? They knew very well that Ling Han had gifted them each with a Transcending Origin Pill because they had pointed out the location of the cavern to him. This was Ling Han's token of appreciation for their aid. Otherwise, who would be so generous to do such a thing? They didn't have such a close relationship after all. 1 pill would allow the one who consumed it to advance 1 layer. If this pill was sold, what kind of astronomical price would it be worth? Ling Han, Lu Dong, Li Hao and Xueqi immediately took their respective pills and proceeded to digest the effects while Lu Yutong was responsible for standing guard over them. Chen Pengju and Zhou Chong could only watch enviously from the side. Thankfully, the Transcending Origin Pill wouldn't suddenly grow wings and fly away, so when they have broken through to element gathering tier, they'd also be able to use it. Ling Han sat down beside some bushes at one side. After he had consumed a Transcending Origin Pill, the spiritual chi from all around him surged towards him. His 5 elements mix chaos lotus fluttered slightly and began to absorb the spiritual chi like mad. His cultivation level immediately began to shoot up. He had already reached the peak period of the 1st layer of element gathering tier, and under the large volume of concentrated spiritual chi, he immediately began to solidify the 2nd origin nucleus. 5 pinpricks of light appeared from nothing, and slowly transformed into 5 rotating nuclei. Then, their speed of rotation gradually increased, and they quickly increased in size. It was also during this process that the space within his dantian also started expanding in order to accommodate even more origin power.
The size of the space within a martial artist's dantian decided the amount of origin power a martial artist could store, thus it was very important. For Ling Han, its importance had increased by a few times because he possessed the 5-element origin nuclei, which granted him with power that exceeded his own actual cultivation level. However, the toll it took on his ability to store origin power was also naturally overwhelming. He required a space within his dantian that was at least a few times larger than other martial artists of the same cultivation level. Otherwise, he'd only be a one-trick pony, only able to display his overwhelming prowess once and very quickly becoming exhausted. Of course, as long as he managed to obtain first place in the Dayuan tournament and get his hands on the dark moon grass, he'd be able to concoct the spatial pill. This was something even powerful warriors of heaven tier would be jealous over. To him, who was only an element gathering tier, how many times would the spatial pill expand the space in his dantian? The problem of limited origin power storage would thus be solved. The greatness of the immortal grade spirit base was fully evident here as the spiritual chi absorbed by his 5 elements mix chaos lotus was indescribably plentiful. The transcending origin pill stimulated the speedy growth of his origin nuclei, allowing his cultivation level to increase like crazy. Second layer of element gathering tier. Early, middle, late, peak period. The speed of his advancement was hair-raising. Ling Han nodded to himself. Although his origin nuclei was equivalent to 5 times of a normal person's origin nucleus, it did not expend additional medicinal effects. When he thought about it, it was natural. Although his origin nuclei was equivalent to 5 times a normal person's origin nucleus, he still had the immortal grade spirit base. So how fast would he be at absorbing spiritual chi? Immortal grade spirit base was originally synonymous with rapid cultivation rate, so how could it be possible he be held back by it? At this moment, the medicinal effects of the first transcending origin pill were completely used up. Ling Han opened his eyes and instantly felt a raging hunger. It seemed he had unknowingly been cultivating for a whole day and night. On another side, Lu Dong and the other two were also almost done with their cultivation. Their faces all revealed exhilaration though they had each advanced to different stages. Lu Dong and Xueqi had reached the peak period of the first layer of element gathering tier, whereas Li Hao had reached the early period of the second layer. Their innate abilities differed, so there was also a difference in the results of absorbing the medicinal effects of the transcending origin pill. Ling Han was slightly optimistic about Li Hao. To be able to form saber chi at this age was proof of his great potential, and facts have also proved that he was talented. Ling Han decided to spare some time and effort to nurture this man. Perhaps, there would appear a saber king in future because of his decision. At this time, the bones of the red-scaled dragon snake were also done, and the essence of the bones had mixed with the soup. It was golden color and produced a strange aroma. This is extremely nutritious. Come, let's all have ourselves a grand feast. Ling Han gathered the others and started to distribute the soup amongst themselves. They had also grilled the snake flesh, and though its effects were far beneath those of the snake bones, it would at least fill their stomachs. The 7 of them started to eat without reserve. Although the red-scaled dragon snake did not have a high grade, but still, kings of demonic beasts were not commonly sold in the marketplace. Even Lu Yutong had only eaten such a delicacy twice. Even she, a princess of a great clan, was so, thus Lu Dong and his group were even more eager for such a rare meal. Not long after, they had drunk the whole pot of soup until nothing was left. They all felt that their stomachs were extremely full and bloated, as if even one more bite and they would burst. This was natural. The bone marrow of the red-scaled dragon snake was equivalent to an extremely nutritious medicine. They felt this way because they have had too much nutrition. The 7 of them quickly sat down in cross-legged positions and started to digest this extremely nutritious food. This could not help them advance their cultivation level, but would still help them strengthen their physiques. It was still extremely beneficial for them. Ling Han circulated the indestructible heaven scroll to absorb the medicinal effects of all he had consumed into every part of his body. A golden light actually started to flicker from his body. However, this glow was very faint, and if you didn't pay attention, you'd miss it completely. It's great, he thought in his heart. The indestructible heaven scroll could help him completely absorb all the benefits of what he had consumed, without wasting a single drop. It was common sense that the food one consumes could not possibly be absorbed completely by one's body, especially for this kind of extremely nutritious food. That was because if the medicinal effects were too strong,
They could not be digested within a short period of time.
However, after 1 or 2 days, due to the natural processes of the body, the nutrition would be naturally removed from one's body.
How great of a waste was that? After I have finished digesting it, I'll definitely be able to cultivate the body of the dead tree from the dead tree tier. Chapter 53. Body of Dead Tree. Another day passed. Ling Han suddenly opened his eyes, a pleased smile turning up at the corners of his lips.
He drew his sword and lowered the blade in a slash at his extended left hand.
If anyone had seen such a thing, they would definitely think he was committing self-mutilation, but after a while longer, they'd definitely be shocked to the point that their eyeballs were in danger of popping out of their heads, for as this slash encountered his hand, it did not leave a single scratch on his skin. The only proof of what he had done was a white line on his hand. Indeed, my defense has improved by a considerable amount, Ling Han nodded. Although he had not poured origin power into that strike just now, he had also not used origin power to strengthen his defense. He had depended entirely on his physique's innate defense, without any external aid. He increased the power of the strike, and simultaneously began to circulate the indestructible heaven scroll. The sword lowered once again in a slash, and this time it produced a gash on his hand. However, something even more bizarre appeared. Not a single drop of blood flowed from this gash. Haha, so this is the first layer of the indestructible heaven scroll, the dead tree tier.
The physical body would be like that of a dead tree, and even after being struck by a sword, the body would not bleed, nor would the essential life force be damaged.
The smile on Ling Han's face became wider.
The gash he himself had created was healing at a tremendously rapid pace and very quickly vanished.
There wasn't even a mark left behind. This was an unbelievable feat, and this is only the body of dead tree. Ling Han could not help feeling a bit rueful. Once he reached rock cliff tier and formed body of rock cliff, then his skin would be as tough as rock. Even a heavy strike would not injure him one bit, as his defense would have once again been upgraded to a new level. Iron sheet tier would be even more amazing, and his power would become even more tyrannical. But when he finally achieved diamond tier, that'd be a fundamental change. Even a missing limb could be regrown, and his life force would be so powerful it would be practically beyond reasonable limits. According to the scroll, I'd be able to condense a drop of indestructible true fluid once I reach dead tree tier. In the future, no matter how heavy the injury I suffer, as long as I refine this indestructible true fluid, it'd heal instantly. Indestructible Heaven Scroll. It indeed lives up to its name. Ling Han did not immediately begin condensing the indestructible true fluid. This was a very time-consuming process, and was not something that could be completed successfully within a short period of time. Haha, once I formed the body of dead tree, my last and only weakness would be eliminated. Ling Han was extremely overjoyed. In this world, there were certain races that were powerful from birth. One such example was the Four Winds race, who possessed jaw-dropping speed. Even their members who were only in element gathering tier could be considered to be on even footing with gushing spring tier. Another example was the sword-armed race, whose arms could transform into sharp blades. The higher their cultivation level, the sharper and sturdier their blade arms. An even more powerful example would be the Wild Thunder race. Their members were born with lightning surrounding their bodies, and thus their attacks were terrifyingly powerful. This was labeled as Special Body Constitution. Whether in his last life or in his current life, Ling Han did not have such special constitution, but the cultivation of the indestructible Heaven Scroll allowed him to acquire one. This was practically inconceivable, as it had broken the ironclad rules of nature. Body of Dead Tree could only be compared to some lower-grade special constitution, but if I actually managed to form Body of Diamond, then what race would actually be able to compare to this kind of special physical constitution? In this life, I am destined to be invincible, to walk the path no one has ever walked before, to shatter the void and become a god. Ling Han collected his stray thoughts and glanced over at Lu Dong and the rest. The essence of the bone marrow of the dragon snake drained very quickly. If it still could not be digested within a whole day and night, then there would only remain less than 1/10 of the nutrition in it. Thus, they practically wouldn't obtain much benefit at all. Indeed, not long after, Lu Yutong and the rest completed their refinement process, and stood up one by one. They were not cultivating the indestructible Heaven Scroll, so naturally, it was impossible to completely refine all the essence of the bone marrow.
Still, all of them looked very pleased, as they had indeed obtained some benefits. Big Brother Ling, there are about 10 days left before the new year, so we have to return. After the new year, let us meet again at De Yuan City. Farewell. The 5 of them bade farewell to Ling Han and Lu Yutong, though Chen Pengju seemed like he had something that he was hesitant to say. In the end, he still did not say a single word and, with Li Hao and his group, walked further and further away into the distance. Ling Han looked over at Lu Yutong and said, "How is it? How is your gain?" "Very profitable." Lu Yutong nodded, her beautiful face showing a joy that was difficult to conceal. "My physical defense has improved to a whole new level, and my bones as well as my muscle strength have also improved considerably. If I battle with Cheng Wen Kuan now, I can guarantee that I'd be able to kill him within 10 moves." Demonic beasts that had a shred of a king's bloodline were much too rare, but the benefits they promised were also colossal. This was also why Ling Han had immediately raced over here once he had reached the peak period of the first layer of element gathering tier. If he managed to gain these benefits, then his actual power would naturally improve greatly, and the chances of victory at the Dayuan tournament at the beginning of the year would also increase dramatically. Even for the Lu clan that was considered one of the most powerful great clans of Rain Country, they still might not be able to get their hands on demonic beasts that had a king's bloodline. This kind of thing was completely dependent on fate and fortune. Ling Han took the second transcending origin pill and continued cultivation. He had also gifted Li Hao with 2 pills to give this young saber wielder a helping hand. However, just what extent Li Hao's future achievements would reach, that still depended on his own potential and willingness to work hard. After he had refined this transcending origin pill, he had also reached the peak period of the 3rd layer of element gathering tier. However, the effects of the transcending origin pill also ended here. It could not help him to advance any further than this. Normally, the higher one's cultivation level, the fewer pills there were that could actually help one advance their cultivation level. For example, for element gathering tier, a martial artist between the 4th and 6th layers needed to take revolving origin pill. However, this required the inner core of demonic beast kings that were in the gushing spring tier. To use the inner core of a king in gushing spring tier to concoct a pill for a martial artist in element gathering tier was much too extravagant. He still had 6 transcending origin pills in his possession. He decided to hand them over to Ling Dongxing on their return home, and allow him to gift them to those exceptionally gifted clansmen within the clan. "Let's also return home," Ling Han said to Lu Yutong. "In." Lu Yutong graced him with an enchanting smile. Even she herself did not realize that her icy demeanor was slowly melting in front of Ling Han. The 2 of them left the 7 Wind Mountains and returned to the inn they had kept their horses at. After paying the fees, they urged their horses on a return journey towards Grey Cloud Town. They rode by day and rested by night. Ling Han took advantage of this time to begin condensing the indestructible true fluid and, after 2 days, formed a drop about the size of a grain of rice. Theoretically, the drop had to reach the size of a bean to be considered successfully condensed and possess the greatest possible effects, but it was still usable now, though the effects were definitely much weaker. Looks like I need about 10 days to condense a single drop. However, the Da Yuan tournament is also at the beginning of next year, so there'd be enough time. This will become one of my trump cards. 7 days later, they had returned to Grey Cloud Town, and Ling Han had also successfully broken through to the 4th layer of element gathering tier. For him, this was really nothing too difficult. At this time, there were only about 3 days before the year's end, and almost all houses were decorated with lanterns and colored banners in preparation for celebrating the new year. The Ling clan residence was also filled with an air of celebration. Because Ling Zhongquan had died, the Ling clan was now completely under the control of Ling Dongxing. Everyone was united, giving off a brand new appearance. Young Masterham. Young Masterham. When Ling Han passed by, all servants he encountered greeted him respectfully. This young man who was soon going to be 17 years old was going to be the future backbone of the Ling clan, and no one dared to underestimate him anymore. "Honor, you've returned." Ling Dongxing revealed a relieved expression, which quickly transformed into one of shock, and said, "Your cultivation level seems to have improved greatly again." 4th layer of element gathering tier. Ling Han said with a smile. Ling Dongxing's expression became very colorful, though he did not gasp in surprise this time round. In the end, he finally settled on a wide smile that was filled with gratification.
His son was freakishly talented. This was something he already knew. In the future, he only needed to feel gratified by Ling Han's continuous progress, and that would be enough. As a parent, wasn't this the greatest source of pride? After this, the only big event remaining was the celebration of the new year. Yet Ling Han did not relax, and continued to work hard at cultivation every single day. He concocted some spirit-gathering pills for himself.
This pill allowed him to increase the rate of his cultivation, and while the help it gave him was not much, every little bit counted.
Lu Yutong also displayed a strong talent in sword arts, and within a short period of more than 10 days, actually managed to form another flash of sword qi. Chapter 54. Heading towards Deyuan City.
Ling Han did not feel this was odd in any way.
From the start, Lu Yutong was very talented in the field of martial arts. It was illogical that she had still not yet managed to form sword qi.
Now that she has made a breakthrough in this area, it seemed as if the potential she had been accumulating gushed out in one go, producing excellent results.
However, the third flash of sword qi would not be so easily formed. For Lu Yutong, she was already satisfied with being able to possess 2 flashes at the mere age of 18 and stepping into the ranks of young rulers. Moreover, she could be considered to be among the stronger, more powerful young rulers. The general level of martial arts in Rain Country was too low. You'd be praised as a ruler once you managed to form saber or sword qi. When the new year came, all the branch families of the Ling clan returned to the main clan residence to greet the coming of spring together. Normally, these external branch families had their own residences outside the main clan residence and were responsible for managing the clan's various businesses. Most of them were ordinary people. Only a few have stepped onto the path of cultivation. After all, for every 10 people there was only one person that actually possessed a spirit base.
Big Brother Han.
A little girl by the name of Ling Zixian kept following Ling Han around. After the new year, the little girl would only be 8 years old, yet she had already awoken her spirit base. Furthermore, it was a low-level Earth-grade spirit base. According to the rules of the clan, she was qualified to be enrolled in the Grey Cloud Academy, and the clan would provide her school fees as well as cultivation resources. Everyone knew that you wouldn't be able to protect your wealth if you didn't have enough power. As a result, every clan would carefully nurture the clansmen who were found to be gifted with talent to become martial artists. If there appeared a genius amongst these clansmen, it would also be a source of pride for the clan. Just like the 8 great clans of the imperial city, they had all been merely small clans which grew by choosing such a policy. There had been 3 members of the Ling clan that had been enrolled in the Grey Cloud Academy previously. Aside from Ling Han and Ling Mu Yun, there was another named Ling Ji Dao. However, as he was now getting too old, after the new year, he would no longer attend the academy. Instead, he would join the clan guards. After a few years of gaining experience, he'd be promoted to assistant captain and then captain. Such an important post naturally had to be handed to a clansman for safety's sake. Meanwhile, as Ling Zixian had awakened, after the new year, she would begin attending the Grey Cloud Academy. However, Ling Han had other plans. He could not possibly remain in Ling clan forever. He desired to climb to the summit of martial arts in the future, so Rain Country was too small for him. As a result, before he left, he needed to nurture as many talented people as possible to help his father relieve some of his worries. He has decided to bring Ling Zixian to the imperial city and enroll her in the Huyang Academy. Ling Dongxing had already obtained a place of enrollment in Huyang Academy previously, and Ling Han definitely would be able to rank amongst the top 50 participants in the Deyuan tournament. In this manner, their clan would have 2 places. Of course, he did not intend to become the babysitter of the girl. He would definitely have her parents follow her to the imperial city to take care of her daily needs.
Why are you crying again?
Ling Han smiled, as he picked up the little girl.
Da Xiong is buding Xuan Xuan.
The little girl said, full of grievances. Big Brother Han, you help Xian Xian beat him up. Ling Han laughed heartily, patted the little girl's head, and said, you and Da Xiong are both members of the Ling clan, so you must help and support one another. Our fists should be aimed at outsiders, and not used to beat our own people up. But he said Xian Xian is ugly. The little girl said, pouting. Our family's Xian Xian is so pretty. You're now a small beauty and in the future, you'd be a great beauty. Da Xiong is only jealous of you. Ling Han said, smiling.
The little girl was instantly cheered by such compliments, and clapping her hands, she said, Xian Xian is the most beautiful girl in the world. After a moment of thought, she realized this was a bit too arrogant, so she changed her words and said, Big sister Yu Tong is the most beautiful, Xian Xian is the second most beautiful. Ling Han gave a big laugh and said to Lu Yu Tong, she's praising you. Big sister Yu Tong, when are you and big brother Han getting married? The little girl asked innocently, her head tilted. Lu Yu Tong instantly blushed at this. She swiftly turned around and ran off, causing Ling Zixian to feel very puzzled. What was going on? Xian Xian, you've scared off my wife, how are you going to compensate me? Ling Han deliberately frowned and said. Ling Zi Yuan bit at her fingernail, thought for a while, and said comfortingly to Ling Han, Big brother Han, Xian Xian will help you find a prettier big sister. She looked extremely mischievous when she said this. Ling Han could not hold back his laughter. Kids say what they like, and were innocent and adorable. It was too bad that this purity could not be preserved forever. After the New Year celebration, Ling Dongxing, Ling Han and Lu Yu Tong all set off towards the Deyuan city to participate in the Deyuan tournament. Deyuan city was more than 800 miles away from Grey Cloud Town. The three of them hastened their journey, and 2 days later, they arrived outside Deyuan city. Compared with the small tiny Grey Cloud Town, Deyuan city looked very imposing and grand. The city grounds extended over a few tens of miles, and the city walls were about 100 meters tall. It looked like a creeping colossal beast. There were 4 gates of entry into Deyuan city: north, east, south and west gates. Every day, there would be travelers coming in from all directions to this most bustling, most lively city within the nearest 1,000 miles. There were merchants, refugees and wandering martial artists here. The overall level of martial arts in the city was higher than the surrounding area by a whole new level. The current Deyuan king was a powerful warrior of spiritual ocean tier, and according to rumors, he was also the only one in spiritual ocean tier, possessing ultimate power and prestige. Ling Han and his group arrived at the city gate. They did not have to be searched or go through any kind of security check. They only had to pay the city entrance fees. 1 silver coin per person. This was not very expensive for them, though for commoners, this would indeed be a very big sum. Within the city, there were many tall grand buildings of various heights extending into the distance. It was the epitome of a king's city, stunning any new visitors to the city. Ling Dongxing had come here a long time ago, and had even left the country before, so he naturally would not be shocked. Lu Yu Tong came from the imperial city, so this was a common sight to her. The two of them had initially thought that Ling Han would be stunned by such a grand sight, yet Ling Han looked completely calm and unperturbed, shocking them. They went off in search of an inn. However, it seemed as if many had come to the city to participate in the upcoming Deyuan tournament, and practically every inn was fully occupied. They walked around for over half a day, yet still had not managed to find a place of accommodation. Grandmaster Ling. They had been walking around on the main streets when they heard a surprised voice call out. A white-haired old man walked over to them. He was Xueqi. So you're here, Ling Han said smiling. Grandmaster Ling, I happened to receive an invitation from an old friend during the New Year, asking me to come visit. I hope Grandmaster Ling will forgive me for not paying you a visit during the New Year. Xueqi bent slightly at the waist, a hint of fear on his face. He had already considered Ling Han as half his master, so he would naturally be fearful that he had caused Ling Han's displeasure. Ling Han shook his head and smiled, and said, You don't need to call me Grandmaster, you can just call me by my name in future. In this life, he had already decided to start from a minor character and walk firmly and sturdily onwards, battling various so-called geniuses to improve himself. Otherwise, if he continued to be a Grandmaster Alchemist, then due to the grand noble status accorded to an alchemist, which genius would dare to spar with him? This Xueqi shook his head continuously. He was a person who was reverent of his master and his teaching. Ling Han had granted him a kindness in guiding him before, so in his heart, Ling Han was already his teacher. To directly address your teacher by his name without any kind of honorific, this was practically disgraceful. Don't say this or that. It's decided. If you call me Grandmaster in future, then I'd really be angry, Ling Han deliberately put on a stern face and said in a half-joking manner.
Chapter 55. Introduction.
Xueqi could not help feeling troubled, yet once he saw the determined expression Ling Han had on his face, he could only nod his head and say, "I shall obey Grandmaster's young friend Ling's words."
In the end, he still could not bear addressing Ling Han without any honorific. At least the address, young friend Ling, sounded more polite.
"Oh right, is young friend Ling here to take part in the De Yuan tournament?"
Xueqi asked.
Ling Han gave a nod and said, "We aren't very fortunate, we still have yet to find a place of accommodation." "Then why not come and stay at our Heaven's Medicine Pavilion?" Xueqi's eyes immediately lit up and suggested to Ling Han.
"Is that suitable?" Ling Han had walked around for over half a day, so he really didn't want to tire himself anymore.
"Suitable, of course it's suitable,"
Xueqi said quickly.
To be able to stay near to Grandmaster Ling, he'd be able to conveniently ask Grandmaster Ling for guidance in alchemy.
"Then we shall trouble you," Ling Han said, smiling.
"It's no trouble at all." Xueqi walked in the lead, guiding them to the branch of Heaven's Medicine Pavilion in the city. Unlike the small branch of Heaven's Medicine Pavilion in Grey Cloud Town, De Yuan City's branch of Heaven's Medicine Pavilion was actually a heavily guarded, gigantic palace, and there were about 100 alchemists stationed here. These alchemists were in charge of concocting a massive amount of pills every day, which were then delivered to be sold at places like Grey Cloud Town and Guorock Town. Ma Jun of the Grey Cloud Town's branch of Heaven's Medicine Pavilion was only in charge of overseeing things, and usually, he did not have to concoct any pills. Usually, these characters had lower rate of successfully concocting pills, so if they were given the same medicinal ingredients to be concocted into pills, it would be too much of a waste. Low-level black-grade alchemists similarly had a very high, noble status in this place. All guards as well as the alchemists made their salutations respectfully when they saw Xueqi approach. The branch master of this branch of Heaven's Medicine Pavilion was called Zhang Wei Shan. He was also a low-level black-grade alchemist and had been friends with Xueqi for many years. In the past, both had entered Heaven's Medicine Pavilion at the same time, and through many years of motivating and competing with each other, both managed to become low-level black-grade alchemists. "Young friend Ling, I have a presumptuous request," Xueqi said a bit embarrassedly after he had made arrangements for them to reside there temporarily.
"You've encountered some problem in alchemy?" Ling Han said with a smile. He. Xueqi was a bit embarrassed.
Although he was already quite old, but in front of Ling Han, it seemed as if he was only a young brat who had just entered the field of alchemy.
He did not think this was anything odd though.
He said, "Not me, it's an old friend of mine."
He managed to obtain an old formula.
However, because of the long passage of time, there are some words that can no longer be clearly read from the old formula.
Thus, he has encountered some trouble when he attempted to concoct the pill. Ling Han suddenly understood and said, "You want me to help you write down the complete formula?" "I hope for young friend's guidance," Xueqi said. "The name of this pill formula is reverse pill, and it's very effective for healing wounds.
If this formula is able to see the light again, then many people will be saved." So it was reverse pill. Could it be that even such ordinary medicinal pills have already been lost in the passage of time?
Ling Han felt that this was really strange.
Whether martial arts or alchemy, with accumulated studies and research of every generation, these two fields should have become stronger and stronger.
Yet why had so many pill formulas been lost in the passage of time?
He nodded and said, "Then I'll go take a look." "This way please, Grandmaster."
Xueqi immediately switched back to using honorifics. Only after the words left his mouth did he react and change his words as he said, "Young friend, this way please." The two of them walked side by side and soon arrived at a residence in the palace courtyard. The door was ajar, and there were 3 people within. 2 old men and a young girl. The 2 old men were both seated and drinking tea while the young girl was standing behind one of the old men. The young girl appeared to be about 16 or 17 years old. She was quite delicate and pretty.
However, one corner of her mouth was slightly uplifted, and her big black eyes looked extremely intelligent, so on the whole, she looked rather crafty.
Seeing Xueqi, the 2 old men stood and smiled in greeting.
"Old man Zhu, let me introduce someone to you." One of the old men hurried over, and pointing at the other old man said, "This is Duanmu Chongfeng."
Brother Duanmu has been praised to excel at both alchemy and sword arts. His sweeping cloud sword art is the best in the whole of Rain Country. You've admired him for a long time, right? When Xueqi heard this, there was no way he could introduce Ling Han immediately. He raised his clasped hands in Duanmu Chongfeng's direction, and said, "Brother Duanmu, it's an honor to meet you at last." "Haha, Brother Zhu, I heard that you had improved the wind and fire pill just recently. I've long wanted to come and meet you, and today I've finally gotten the chance to," Duanmu Chongfeng said with a smile. The other old man was naturally Zhang Wei Shan. "Brother Duanmu, old man Zhang, let me introduce someone to you. This is Xueqi intended to introduce Ling Han to the two of them." "Old man Zhu, now that I've invited Brother Duanmu here, perhaps with the combined efforts of the three of us, we may be able to patch up the pill formula for reverse pill within 3 months, Zhang Wei Shan said excitedly. "Let me introduce Dash." "Haha, Brother Zhang, you speak too highly of me. My main focus is on sword arts, and I have only lightly studied about alchemy. The main workforce will still be the two of you. I will just suggest ideas from one side," Duanmu Chongfeng said, once again interrupting Xueqi. The two old men had naturally thought that Ling Han was a junior of Xueqi, and so did not really pay attention to him. At that moment, the young girl walked over to Ling Han, and walked 2 circles around him. She kept making a clicking noise with her mouth, as if she was making some kind of appraisal. "Are you Grandmaster Zhu's disciple?" the young girl asked. "No." Ling Han shook his head.
"Oh, then you must not have passed Grandmaster Zhu's test yet." The young girl thought that she was being very conscientious, and in a very mature, experienced manner, patted Ling Han's shoulder, and said, "I have already been received by Grandmaster Zhang as a disciple, so I will be your elder sister disciple in future. Don't worry, I'll definitely take care of you. If anyone dares to bully you, just announce my name." Ling Han could not help smiling and said, "Announce what name?" "Yeah, you don't even know who I am?" The young girl pressed one hand to her forehead and shook her head repeatedly. "Hey, hi, what rural village did you pop out from?" "I am Qi Zhantai, the 7th princess of the royal house of De Yuan." Ling Han gave an "oh." A mere princess was not someone who would make him lose his composure. Hey, what attitude is that? I am your elder sister disciple," Qi Zhantai said angrily. "My 2 brothers, let me introduce to you an exceptional genius of alchemy." It was only now that Xueqi managed to find an opportunity to introduce Ling Han. He walked over to Ling Han and said, "This here is Ling Han, young friend Ling. To tell you the truth, the wind and fire pill was successfully completed under the guidance of young friend Ling. If not for his assistance, it may have taken a few years before I could finally complete improving the pill." "What?" Zhang Wei Shan and Duanmu Zhongfeng were both dumbfounded. They looked at Ling Han and turned to look at Xueqi, feeling that all this was too unreal. Qi Zhantai covered her gaping mouth with one hand. She had previously taken Ling Han to be Xueqi's junior, but in the blink of an eye, he had become Grandmaster Zhu's young friend. Then wouldn't that mean he was her senior? "Old man Zhu, you're kidding, right?" Zhang Wei Shan called out immediately. Xueqi's expression turned solemn and said, "How could I possibly joke about this kind of matter?" Zhang Wei Shan and Duanmu Chongfeng once again turned back to look at Ling Han, and this time, their stares were completely different. Chapter 56. Who Wants Your Pill Formula? So young. Whether it was the field of martial arts or the field of alchemy, there has never been a lack of geniuses. But Ling Han was only how old? 17 years old? 18 years old? Even if he had been studying alchemy from the moment he was born, how many years of experience could he have accumulated at such a young age? And what alchemist had not gone through the process of concocting massive amounts of pills to accumulate experience before finally gaining recognition? So which aristocratic family specializing in alchemy is young friend the heir to? Zhang Wei Shan asked very politely. He knew Xueqi very well, and knew that it was impossible that the latter would actually make a joke about this kind of thing. "I'm self-taught," Ling Han said. He was already the alchemist emperor, how could he be the heir to someone else? Zhang Wei Shan was even more shocked, whereas Duanmu Chongfeng still thought that Xueqi must be joking around. The most important thing in alchemy was inheritance. For example, in the case of pill formulae, without a master or teachings of one's clansmen, how else would one have obtained them?
By pondering over it oneself? What a joke. All pill formulae were the accumulated result of multiple generations of alchemists' work.
If one depended on their own efforts to create a completely new pill formula, then one may only be able to invent only one or two types after spending their whole lives hard at work, but there was no guarantee of the effects.
Old man Zhang, take out the pill formula for the reverse pill first, Xueqi urged. He believed that as long as Ling Han helped, it would definitely scare these two old men witless. Zhang Weishan was slightly doubtful. Even if the formula for the reverse pill was not complete, it was still extremely valuable, and he had sacrificed a lot to obtain it. It was like a book of secret martial arts skills. Who would easily show it to others?
Brother Zhang, you can't.
Duanmu Changfeng immediately shook his head.
Even such an important man as he had sacrificed a considerable amount just to be able to have a glance at this formula, and that was still while taking into consideration the fact that he was assisting with the patching up work of the reverse pill formula.
Otherwise, the price he had to pay would be even larger. Who does this brat think he is to be able to easily see the pill formula? Zhang Weishan looked at Zhu Hexian.
It was not that he distrusted this good friend of his.
It was just that Ling Han was really too young, making him feel that Ling Han wasn't very dependable.
Old man Zhang, you don't trust me?
Zhu Hexian was angered. This was a real grandmaster alchemist. Even he wanted nothing more than to follow Ling Han and benefit from his teachings. Unfortunately, he lacked the qualifications to be accepted by Ling Han as a disciple. Yet Duanmu Changfeng actually dared to doubt Ling Han's ability and think that the latter was not qualified to see the pill formula. How could this not enrage him? If it was not for considering Zhang Weishan's face, he'd be picking a fight with Duanmu Changfeng now. Zhang Weishan frowned lightly. From the bottom of his heart, of course he was willing to trust Zhu Hexian. After all, they have been good friends for dozens of years. How could he not understand what kind of person Zhu Hexian was? However, Ling Han was really much too young. So young that he didn't even look the slightest bit like a grandmaster alchemist.
Good.
Zhu Hexian saw the doubt in Zhang Weishan's eyes, and was angered to the point that his chest was trembling. He said, Zhang Weishan, since you don't trust me, then from today onwards, we will no longer be friends.
Old man Zhu.
Zhang Weishan turned pale due to shock. Zhu Hexian had even said that he would break off their friendship, proving how furious he was. He hurriedly waved his hands and said, Don't be angry, I'll take it out right now, all right?
You don't have to force yourself.
Zhu Hexian gave a humph. In his eyes, Ling Han was the alchemy emperor that stood at the top of the world, and Zhang Weishan's attitude was already very disrespectful. As a result, he felt ashamed in front of Ling Han, so how could he still bear to ask Ling Han for help to patch up the pill formula?
Young friend Ling, I'm really sorry,
the old man said apprehensively to Ling Han. Ling Han gave a wave of his hand before looking at Duanmu Changfeng, and said, Do you think that I would consider the formula for the reverse pill important? Haha. Then let me recite the names of some medicinal ingredients for you. Violet smoked leaf, thousand blossom fruit, windless grass. In one breath, he recited out more than 10 different medicinal ingredients. Duanmu Changfeng was unable to make heads or tails of it. What on earth was he talking about? But Zhang Weishan's expression kept changing, and his hands had also started trembling, his gaze becoming more and more feverish. How could he not know what Ling Han was saying? These were the ingredients written on the pill formula for the reverse pill. However, there were 3 ingredients which could not be clearly read, and the quantities required for one of the ingredients had also been blurred. Ling Han did not recite any other medicinal ingredients. All of the ingredients he recited belonged to the formula, and he had even recited an additional 3 ingredients. What did that mean? That he had possession of the complete formula for the reverse pill. What a joke! He had actually been so petty, and did not bear to take out a formula that was incomplete. He really felt so embarrassed that he wanted to find a hole to hide in. Young friend, please forgive this Zhang Weishan's ignorance. Zhang Weishan clasped his hands, and bowed so deeply that his head was at Ling Han's waist level, showing how respectful this apology was. Ling Han was unmoved.
He had come to guide Zhang Weishan out of kindness, yet had to suffer the latter's doubt, so of course he was not pleased. Duanmu Changfeng was even more convinced that these 2 old men had already lost their minds to be so easily bluffed by this little brat. He gave a humph and said, Brat, I don't know what trick you're playing,
but you want to trick me, that's completely impossible.
Brother Duanmu, please leave.
Zhang Weishan suddenly straightened from his bow and said coldly. What? Duanmu Changfeng almost leaped up from his seat. Has your head been kicked by a mule? You had still been standing on the same side with me just now, and now you're actually pointing the spear at me? How can you be so ungrateful?
Brother Zhang, what is the meaning of this?
His expression also turned cold. The things you've gifted me, I will have someone send it back later. For now, you are not welcomed here. Zhang Weishan said indifferently.
He had almost been deceived by Duanmu Changfeng, and had almost missed the opportunity to come into contact with a Grandmaster Alchemist, so whatever good feelings he had towards Duanmu Changfeng had disappeared. He could barely hold himself back from biting his head off now.
For any alchemist, there was no higher honor than restoring an ancient pill formula.
Good.
Duanmu Changfeng's face had turned ashen.
For someone who excelled both in the fields of alchemy and sword arts and whose position was so venerable like him, to actually be turned out by someone, and moreover, for the cause of it all to be a little brat, how could he not be furious?
With a swing of his sleeves, he stepped out of the door. Before he left, his eyes swept over Ling Han, and they were filled with coldness. Apparently, he had blamed everything on Ling Han. This was really uninvited trouble. Ling Han shook his head. Duanmu Changfeng was in gushing spring tear, and was not someone he could fight on equal footing yet, so he could not be careless.
Old man Zhu, are you satisfied now?
Zhang Weishan said with a smile.
How tactful of you.
Zhu Hexian glared at Zhang Weishan for a moment. No matter what, they had been old friends for so many years, so the words he spoke just now had only been out of anger and irritation. He walked over to Ling Han, bowed deeply and said, Young friend, this old and useless man apologizes to you. This old fellow too. Zhang Weishan bowed again. However, his attitude still was not comparable with Zhu Hexian's.
Zhu Hexian addressed himself as this old and useless man, whereas he addressed himself as this old fellow, so it seemed that he was still putting on some airs.
But Qi Zhantai, who had been standing at the side all this while, was dumbfounded. Her master had actually chased off Duanmu Changfeng, a man who excelled both in alchemy and martial arts, because of Ling Han. Furthermore, he had even started a feud with the other. This brat was really too capable. Chapter 57. Join the queue. Ling Han walked over to the study table and took up a pen and paper. With very good penmanship, he immediately started writing on the paper. He wrote very quickly, and soon lifted his pen from the paper. He then handed the paper he had written on to Zhang Weishan. Because of Zhu Hexian, he had still decided to give Zhang Weishan a helping hand. After all, the old man has always been at his beck and call, and has helped him considerably. More importantly, it was he who had provided Ling Han with information about the whereabouts of the Earth Dragon grass. Zhang Weishan received the paper, and as his eyes swept over it, an expression of surprise and joy appeared on his face. This was the pill formula for the reverse pill.
It definitely was, because not only were the medicinal ingredients the same as what he had on his incomplete formula, even the quantities required were the same.
Furthermore, there were even additional 3 ingredients that could not be read from the incomplete formula. Zhang Weishan was extremely excited, because in the field of alchemy, the reverse pill was publicly known to be lost in the passage of time. Even if he had spent a large sum of money to purchase the incomplete formula, this incomplete formula had actually been inferred by many alchemists before. They had all attempted to restore the complete formula, but had not succeeded. If he managed to produce the complete pill, then his status in the world of alchemists would ascend to a whole new level. What a joke! Previously, he had still been reluctant to show the incomplete formula to Ling Han. Now wasn't reality practically slapping him in the face? The old man's face turned very red when he thought of this.
Zhu Hexian gave a humph and said, Old man Zhang, are you happy now?
He was still a little upset at what had occurred previously.
He.
Zhang Weishan laughed, slightly embarrassed. His hands grasped onto the pill formula as if it was some kind of ultimate treasure. Ling Han walked out of the residence and said, I'm going now.
Many thanks, young friend.
Zhang Weishan quickly ran over. Once he knew that Ling Han was currently staying at Heaven's Medicine Pavilion, he did not feel any rush to immediately repair the relationship between himself and Ling Han. Moreover, he also needed a little time to adapt. Ling Han nodded. After he stepped out of the residence, he strolled around. Hey, you are really ungenerous. Qi Zhantai rushed over, an expression of rebuke on her face. Ling Han smiled and asked, "In what way am I ungenerous? You obviously are not Grandmaster Zhu's disciple, and caused me to embarrass myself," she said in reproach. Previously, she had even said that she would become Ling Han's elder sister disciple and would take care of Ling Han in future. She had never thought that this guy was so awesome that even Duanmu Changfeng would be driven off because of him. "I never said I was. It was you who thought I was." Ling Han shook his head. "I don't care, you have to compensate me," Qi Zhantai said shamelessly. "Then how do you want me to compensate you?" Ling Han asked. Qi Zhantai tilted her head, thought for a while then said, "I haven't thought of it yet, so you'll owe me first." "Oh right. Are you here to participate in the Dayuan tournament?" "That's right," Ling Han nodded. "Then I'll kindly give you some exclusive behind-the-scenes information," Qi Zhantai said. "There is a considerable number of elites that have arrived to participate in the tournament this time. My fourth elder brother, of course, will be able to get first place. Aside from him, there is also Li Dongyu from the Stone Wolf sect. Apparently, he's also in the 9th layer of Element Gathering tier, and he's mastered the yellow-grade martial arts technique, Little Tianyuan Hands. Even my fourth elder brother has given him a very high appraisal. In the previous Dayuan tournament, he got the 5th place. And there's also the third son of the Jin clan, Jin Wuji. He's also a freakishly talented guy. He's mastered the Jin Yang Palm of their Jin clan. He's rumored to also have 2 flashes of Palm Chi, and in the previous tournament, he was 6th. And there's, let me think for a moment. An exceptional genius came from Fuyang Town. His name is Xiaozhong Guang. He's only 18 this year and he's already in the 8th layer of Element Gathering tier. He's terrifyingly powerful in battle, and my fourth elder brother says he has the ability to enter the top 5. Right, there's also an amazing guy from Eternal River Town. What was his name again? Louis? No, was it Luyu? Or Lu something? He's also 18 years old, and in the 8th layer of Element Gathering tier. He also has the ability to enter the top 5. The last is the youngest son of the sect master of Bailey sect, Bailey Tang Yun. Apparently, he's just in the 7th layer of Element Gathering tier, but my fourth elder brother says that this guy is extraordinary, and his prowess is nowhere beneath Li Dongyu. The girl's fourth elder brother was Qi Yongyi, the one with the nickname King of Eternal Night. He was extremely talented and very powerful, so much that even Lu Yutong had exclaimed in admiration. Although Ling Han was confident in himself, he would not be arrogant. It was just that he had too many trump cards in his hands, and he really could not think of anyone who could fight with him on even footing in the whole Element Gathering tier. Or at least, he could not think of anyone like that in this small Dayuan city. He nodded and said, "Thank you for your inside information." "Oh right. Fourth elder brother is hosting a feast tomorrow night. Why don't you come as well?" Qi Zhantai said, "Only those martial artists who have a chance of getting into the top 50 in the Dayuan tournament this time have been invited." Ling Han could not hold back a smile and said, "Your elder brother is attracting the support of the people here." "You're clever." Qi Zhantai did not deny it. If Qi Yongyi intended to obtain the position of Dayuan king in future, he needed to start gathering his support. It would not necessarily be the one who's extremely talented or very powerful that would obtain this royal position. It depended on one's popularity as well. If no one in the royal house was willing to support you, how would you be able to ascend to this position? Although fourth elder brother is extremely talented in the field of martial arts, eldest brother has built up his support through painstaking effort over the duration of more than 10 years. Additionally, eldest brother's mother is the daughter of the Lu clan head. So with the support and favor of the Lu clan, who would emerge victorious in the end is still uncertain. The young girl had curled her hands into fists, her face full of excitement, as if she wanted nothing more than for the two brothers to immediately start fighting, and allow her to spectate it to her heart's content. Aside from the king's house, there were 4 other great parties in Dayuan City that could not be underestimated. They were respectively the Stone Wolf sect, Bailey sect, Jin clan and Lu clan. With the close relationship he had with the Lu clan, the eldest prince really had a big advantage in the battle for the king's position. Ling Han only thought about it for a short while before pushing it to the back of his mind. What did this battle for the king's position have to do with him? Qi Zhantai kept chattering on and on, bothering Ling Han for a very long while, before she finally let him go.
However, when she turned around, she revealed a very crafty smile and murmured, Fourth elder brother, I've introduced a very capable helper to you.
You must not mess things up. Ling Han was someone whom even Xueqi Xin and Zhang Wei Shan addressed as young friend, so he must definitely have an astonishing ability in the field of alchemy. If Qi Yongyi was able to obtain Ling Han's aid, then there would definitely be innumerable martial artists willing to join him. For no other reason but for the sake of alchemical pills. When a martial artist cultivated, he would definitely need the aid of alchemical pills to support his cultivation. And if there was a high-grade alchemist overseeing things in the party, then it would naturally be very attractive to all martial artists. Ling Han naturally saw through the little girl's plot, but he did not think too much of it. He really did want to take a look at this Qi Yongyi and see how much of a genius he was. On the second day, Ling Dongxing went with Ling Han to register. The participants for the Daiyuan tournament were only limited to the local area, so there was a need to provide proof of identification to go through a strict check, because this concerned the enrollment quota for the Huyang Academy. There were 36 cities in Rain Country, and it was impossible for them all to have the same average level of martial arts. Some were higher and some were lower. As a result, a martial artist who had only obtained the 60th position in a tournament in a city with a higher level of martial arts would be able to obtain the 40th position in a tournament in a city with a lower level of martial arts. Then wouldn't they all race over to a weaker city to participate in the tournament to be able to qualify for a place of enrollment in Huyang Academy? The people of Dayuan City could only take part in the Daiyuan tournament, and the people from other cities too could not come over to participate. In this manner, everyone protected their own territory. There was a large number of people queuing up to register, and the queue was very long. Ling Han calmly joined the queue. He had already discarded the noble status of a martial artist in Heaven Tier he had possessed in his last life. Everything had begun anew, and he was setting out from the level of an ordinary man. There was nothing wrong with queuing up. After about 2 hours, it was almost his turn. There was only one person left in front of him. But it was at this moment that a young man escorted by 4 robust men in black forced the others in the queue aside. The 5 of them came to the registration point and directly cut into the queue in front of Ling Han. Hey, join the queue at the back. Ling Han frowned and said in displeasure. In. The young man turned to look at Ling Han and broke into laughter. With an expression filled with disbelief, he said, You actually want me to queue up? Do you know who I am? Chapter 58. Chief Butler. I don't care who you are, get back to the end of the line. Ling Han spoke coldly. Ha 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 ha. The young man laughed raucously, as if he had heard the greatest joke in the world. He shook his head. You don't know who I am? I am Jin Wuxiang. My elder brother is Jin Wuji. Jin Wuji, that was one of the strongest competitors in this round of the Daiyuan tournament. No wonder this guy was so arrogant. As a young master of the Jin clan and with a very powerful elder brother, he did have the right to behave recklessly. Unfortunately, the one he had encountered now was Ling Han. Who cares if you're Jin Wuxiang or Jin Wuji? Whoever you are, get back to the end of the line. Ling Han gave an impatient wave of his hand. The smile on Jin Wuxiang's disappeared, replaced by an angered expression. After this brat found out who he was, he still dared to talk back to him? He gave a humph and said, It is beneath me to lower myself to the level of a minor character like you. He turned back around, and was about to begin the registration process. Get lost. Ling Han stretched out a hand, took hold of Jin Wuxiang's shoulder, pulled back and shwa, the guy was flung out of the line. Pang! He crashed into the wall and slid down with a groan. He immediately grimaced in pain. Young Master Wuxiang. The 4 men in black hurried forward to help Jin Wuxiang up. Yet Ling Han did not even afford him a glance and said, I would like to register. When he looked at the man responsible for registering the participants, a faintly surprised expression appeared on his face, because this ordinary-looking old man was actually an elite martial artist in Gushing Spring Tier. Bastard, you actually dare to make a move against me, and still want to pretend that nothing has happened?
Jin Wuxiang shoved away the 4 robust men and strode forwards, his eyes spitting fire. He was the one and only 6th young master of the Jin clan and the younger brother of Jin Wuji, yet someone actually dared to disrespect him.
"Get lost," Ling Han said coldly.
"Who do you think you are, to actually be so bold to disrespect me?"
Jin Wuxiang said furiously, stretching out a hand to take hold of Ling Han.
"Why are you making a racket here?"
The old man who was in charge of registering the participants said, very displeased.
"Old guy, you dare interfere with my business?" Jin Wuxiang immediately gave a humph and glared at the old man.
He was used to being arrogant, plus he was currently furious, and thus he did not give his actions a second thought.
Ling Han could not help shaking his head internally.
This guy really was seeking his own demise. Hee, every generation of the Jin clan is weaker than the last.
"The brats now are becoming more and more thoughtless," the old man sighed.
He stretched out his right hand and gave it a flick. Pang! A Herculean strength rushed forth, and Jin Wuxiang directly flew out of the registration room due to the resulting shock wave. When the old man made a move, everyone finally realized in shock that this was actually a powerful elite martial artist.
All of their faces were filled with astonishment. Who would have thought that an old man who was in charge of recording and registering the participants would actually be an elite martial artist laying low?
"I know who this senior is, he's the chief butler of the royal house of the Dayuan king." "What, the chief butler of the royal house of the Dayuan king? How come he's personally doing this kind of work?"
"You ask me, but whom should I ask?" Someone recognized the identity of this old man, immediately causing a bout of whispering amongst the witnesses.
Meanwhile, Jin Wuxiang, who had intended to avenge himself, immediately became well-behaved. Although the Jin clan was powerful, it was nothing compared to the power of the royal house of the Dayuan king. No matter how arrogant and overbearing he was not a fool. He knew what kind of people he could trifle with, and what kind of people he shouldn't even think about trifling with. He quickly fled with his tail between his legs, followed by his 4 lackeys. After all, the registration deadline was the day after tomorrow, so there was no need for him to register today no matter what. However, Ling Han had become the target of his grudge. If it wasn't for his interference, there wouldn't have been any dispute about his cutting into the queue at all. "Many thanks for your fair judgment, senior," Ling Han said, raising his clasped hands in gratitude.
This was an elite in Gushing Spring tier, and compared to the current him, the old man was much more powerful. Additionally, he had already let go of the identity of his last life as a powerful warrior of heaven tier and the Alchemy Emperor.
There was nothing inappropriate about addressing the old man senior. The old man had a bit of a blurred vision, and he smiled at Ling Han and said, "To be able to break through to the element gathering tier at such a young age, such talent is really promising. My 7th young mistress is about the same age as you, so there might be chances of a match there." When everyone heard this, they could not help the weird expressions plastered on their faces.
Was this chief butler here to seek a prince consort for the royal house?
However, it was impossible for a princess's marriage to be decided by a butler. At most, the chief butler could only be responsible for the first round of selections. Whether the candidate passed or not would still be decided by the Dayuan king. Even so, everyone sat up and took notice of Ling Han. To be able to gain the recognition of an elite of Gushing Spring tier, this brat must have had some outstanding quality. Yet Ling Han pondered and recalled, 7th young mistress, wasn't that Qi Zhantai, that young girl? He laughed loudly and said, "Many thanks for your recognition, senior, but we should complete the registration process first."
This brat really was quite bold to actually dare reject the chief butler in this manner.
Yet the chief butler was all smiles. He was only under the command of the Dayuan king to see if there were any outstanding geniuses in this round of the Dayuan tournament.
It was definitely not possible that Ling Han would become the son-in-law of the royal house just because he had taken a fancy to him.
"Good, where are you from, how old are you, what is your cultivation level and what is your name?" he asked. "I am Ling Han, I came from Grey Cloud Town. After the new year, I'll be 17, and I am currently in the 4th layer of element gathering tier." Ling Han replied to each question with a smile.
Pooh! The eyeballs of those who were close enough to hear his reply were in danger of popping out of their heads, as if they had seen some kind of ghost.
Many of them had already seen that Ling Han was in element gathering tier.
Those who were not able to were clued into the fact by the words of the chief butler.
But when they saw how young Ling Han was, they had all thought that he had just broken through.
At most, he could only be at the peak period of the first layer of element gathering tier. Yet Ling Han was shockingly in the fourth layer of element gathering tier. A 17-year-old in the fourth layer of element gathering tier. This was absolutely astonishing. Even for the genius that was the fourth prince, with the endless cultivation resources supplied by the royal house, had he managed to reach the fourth layer of element gathering tier at 17 years old? Perhaps he had. But that was the farthest he could have ventured.
With such a comparison, they could now easily see how freakishly talented Ling Han was. No wonder the chief butler wanted to enlist him as a prince consort candidate. Ling Han took out his proof of identification. This was something that every citizen of Rain Country would receive upon their birth.
For those who did not have this kind of proof of identification, if they were discovered, they would either become slaves or would be forced to flee from the country.
The chief butler only gave it a brief glance, and then gave a plaque to Ling Han. This was the plaque that would allow Ling Han to participate in the Dayuan tournament that would be held 2 days after tomorrow. Usually, no one would dare to falsify their identity. This was because once you managed to squeeze into the top 50, there would be a second check to verify your identity. If it was discovered that anyone had dared to falsify their identity, this was definitely a very heavy crime. The chief butler was very interested in Ling Han, and kept chatting with him about ordinary, daily life. He really seemed as if he intended to marry off his own daughter to Ling Han. Although everyone else was starting to feel impatient, no one dared to rush him in any way. Even without his esteemed position as the chief butler of the royal house of the Dayuan king, as an elite martial artist in Gushing Spring tier, he was undeniably a powerful presence within the nearest 1,000 miles. It wasn't until Ling Han finally voiced his intention to leave of his own accord that the chief butler ended the conversation. Yet he still told Ling Han that if he was free, he was welcome to visit the royal house of the Dayuan king, which caused everyone else to turn red-eyed with envy. This was the same as giving a protective charm to Ling Han. Who would dare make a move against him now? Chapter 59. Attending the Feast. Because the registration process took too long, Ling Dongxing and his son had their lunch before returning to Heaven's Medicine Pavilion. After resting for a while, it was about close to nighttime.
After Ling Han and Lu Yutong made slight preparations, they set off towards the residence of the fourth prince to attend the dinner banquet. The residence of the fourth prince was only 1 street away from the royal house of the Dayuan king, so the 2 residences were really very close. However, out of the many children of the Dayuan king, only 2 had gained the privilege of possessing their own individual residences. The first prince and the fourth prince. The first prince, Qi Yongshang, had displayed his outstanding qualities from birth. With his extraordinary talent, as well as the fact he was the eldest son of the first wife of the Dayuan king, he had naturally long firmly established his identity as the heir. But with the sudden emergence of the powerful fourth prince, he was currently under a great threat. Now, the position of the heir that he had maintained for so long appeared to be facing imminent danger. As a result, the competition between the 2 princes was getting more and more turbulent, and becoming more and more of a dilemma to the various parties as they wondered which prince they should support. If the prince they supported ascended gloriously to the royal position, that would be great, as their own status would then be raised accordingly as well. But if the prince they supported failed? When a new king is crowned, he brings to court his own favorites and expels those he disliked. The new king would definitely pay them back for their previous lack of support. Ling Han and Lu Yutong did not travel by carriage. Instead, they walked to the residence of the fourth prince. At the door, there were many guards stationed, helping to welcome the incoming guests. "Excuse me, please show us your invitation, the 2 of you." When a guard saw the 2 of them approach, he walked over and blocked them from advancing further. Invitation? Ling Han startled. He did not have this kind of thing, as Qi Zhantai had only issued him a verbal invitation. He said, "I'm Ling Han, and I should be on the name list for guests." "Then I apologize. Those without an invitation will not be allowed to enter," the guard said solemnly. Has that little girl, Qi Zhantai, played a trick on him? Ling Han could not help thinking thus. "Ha ha ha ha, you dare to come here without an invitation,"
a taunting voice said. A young man stepped down from a carriage. He was dressed in luxurious formal attire, making him look very flashy. He was Jin Wuxiang, and just before noon, he had even had an argument with Ling Han. "Village boy,
This here is the residence of the fourth prince, not a place anyone can simply enter freely.
Jin Wuxiang laughed coldly.
He then removed a gold-colored invitation from the folds of his clothes, proudly waved it around and said, "Look here clearly, this is the invitation."
But a minor character like you will never receive this kind of thing in your life. He really was too pleased.
At noon, because of the dread he felt towards the chief butler, he could only choose to flee with his tail between his legs. But since he has met Ling Han here at this moment, this was an opportunity gifted by heavens for him to avenge himself. Haha, he really must properly humiliate this guy, before killing him. Ling Han could not help shaking his head. This guy was only in the 9th layer of body refining tier, so where did his feeling of superiority come from? And he kept attracting aggression for his clan. If he encountered any elite martial artist with a bad temper, that could also possibly lead to difficulties for his clan.
What are you still standing around here for?
Do you think that if you stand here long enough, you'll be pitted and allowed in? Jin Wuxiang continued to sneer in derision, but once his eyes swept over Lu Yutong, his eyes could no longer remove themselves from her figure.
He had only just now realized Lu Yutong's presence, and was instantly captivated by this icy beauty.
He could only feel the rapidly increasing pace of his heartbeat, and the boiling of the blood in his veins.
Brat you dash!
Pang!
Jin Wuxiang had only just opened his mouth when Ling Han gave a heavy blow to his face, and his whole body was instantly flung away. This kind of prodigal young master would definitely have nothing nice to say, so Ling Han made a preemptive strike to avoid filth from entering his ears.
You hit me again?
Jin Wuxiang crawled up from the ground. He was full of grievances. Within this one day, he had been hit by Ling Han twice. He was the 6th young master of the Jin clan. When had he ever received such treatment? If you don't want to be hit a 3rd time, get lost. Ling Han gave a flick of his hand.
How dare you? Are you really so tired of living?
Jin Wuxiang's eyes were spitting fire, and he said to the guards around them, "You have all seen it, right? This guy actually dared to beat up a guest of the 4th prince. Are you not going to apprehend him?" This guy was not stupid. He knew how to take advantage of the situation.
Master Ling, please cooperate. One of the guards stepped out. You must come with us. Although all of them knew that the 6th young master of the Jin clan was a standard prodigal young master, and there were 100 times more people in the city that disliked him than those who liked him, this was the residence of the 4th prince.
How could others be allowed to act impertinently in this place? Jin Wuxiang could not help feeling very proud of himself. He was feeling extremely superior because of his own cleverness. See, who was the one who said he'd be nothing without his clan? Hey, what's the commotion here all about? A young girl dressed in courtly attire walked out, hands behind her back and a crafty expression on her face. It was Zhan Tai.
Greetings, 7th princess. All of the guards hurriedly saluted.
Rise.
The young girl raised her hand in a mature, experienced manner. When she looked at Ling Han, she deliberately put on a surprised expression, and said, Why are you still outside?
Ling Han understood now. The girl had purposely not issued him an invitation just to see a good show. As a result, she must have waited near the door, and naturally had witnessed the conflict between Ling Han and Jin Wuxiang. She could have already stepped out early on to stop it, but had only stepped out now. This showed that this girl was the kind of person that desired to see the world in chaos. When they heard her words, the guards naturally realized that Ling Han was truly one of the guests tonight, so there was no longer any need to bother about little details like why he did not have an invitation. And since the 7th princess has already spoken, they could not possibly still intend to apprehend Ling Han. Master Ling, apologies for our lacking manners, all the guards said in unison to Ling Han. Ling Han only gave Zhan Tai a stern gaze, but the girl did not feel scared at all. She stuck out her tongue at him and quickly ran over to Lu Yutong and said, "Wah, big sister, you're very beautiful." Meanwhile, Jin Wuxiang was infuriated half to death. It seemed like he was a hideous person doing mischief, seeking his own humiliation. His eyes focused on Ling Han, and he naturally thought that Ling Han had clung onto Zhan Tai for her power and influence. And when he recalled that Ling Han still had an extraordinarily beautiful maiden by his side, he immediately realized, this guy was a master at picking up girls, and was a professional at living off women. When he thought in this way, he looked even further down at Ling Han. Many thoughts ran through his mind, like how could he kill Ling Han and avenge himself? Just when his thoughts took a venomous turn, he saw Ling Han walk over to him.
He could not help straightening up into a pompous stance and said, "You want to make peace with me now?"
"It's too late. I will definitely dash."
Pa!
He received a firm, solid slap, and was completely dumbfounded. He, the one and only sixth young master of the Jin clan, had actually been slapped in a public setting. What great shame and humiliation was this? And all around them, whether it was Xueqi, the guards, or the guests who had arrived subsequently, they could not help gasping when they saw this scene. If a conflict happened amongst the younger generation, it was fine and a normal thing. None of the older generation of the clans would make a move because of this. But even if you beat anyone up, never aim for the face. This was not only an embarrassment to Jin Wuxiang, but also the Jin clan behind him. Even the first prince or the fourth prince would not slap Jin Wuxiang impulsively, unless the latter had really done something extremely foolish and idiotic. Who did Ling Han think he was to actually dare to do such a thing? Chapter 60. Sitting Up High. Ling Han was a man of simple principles. If you do not bother me, then I will not bother you either. But if you dare to mess with me, then you should be well prepared to suffer my wrath. You've messed with me several times now. Do you really think I'm an easy target? He asked coldly. Jin Wuxiang really felt like he wanted to weep himself to death. At noontime, it was he who had been flung out, and now, it was also he who had been slapped. All these times, it was he who was on the losing side, okay? And you still dare to say all this? There's no such logic in this world. Of course, he would definitely not reflect on the fact that it was he who had provoked Ling Han intentionally at both occasions. You can be proud however you want now, but when my elder brother comes later, you'll suffer, Jin Wuxiang said harshly. He believed that his elder brother would definitely avenge him later. Pa, pa, pa. Ling Han gave him 3, 4 consecutive slaps. There was no sign that he had taken Jin Wuxiang's threat seriously. I'll be waiting. With these last words, Ling Han, Lu Yutong and Qi Zhantai entered the prince's residence together. How come you're even more of a troublemaker than I am? The 7th princess sighed in a sorrowful manner. You've really caused a disaster now. That was a brat from the Jin clan. Although he himself is not worthy of respect, his elder brother is Jin Wuji. Haven't I told you how powerful Jin Wuji is? And yet you still dare to provoke him. I have to quickly inform Master, and ask him to clean up the mess for you. I'm not going to get implicated in this. Ling Han gave a light rap to her head and said, If you hadn't harbored evil intentions, and had not failed to issue me an invitation, how would there have been so many problems? What evil intentions? You must not wrong an innocent person. Qi Zhantai quickly shook her head vigorously, looking like a rattledrum. She was definitely not going to admit to such a crime. I had just forgotten. Forgotten, okay? Big sister Lu, don't you agree with me? She asked Lu Yutong, acting like a spoiled child. Lu Yutong maintained her cool demeanor, causing Qi Zhantai's eyes to light up. She really felt that this big sister was an individual with quite a personality. The 3 of them arrived at the main hall. There was close to 100 tables here, but they weren't the usual round tables. Instead, they were minuscule long tables, which at most would be able to accommodate 2 people at a time. This setting allowed each guest their own table. If they had brought a companion, then it wouldn't be too much of a tight fit for 2 people to sit at one table. These tables were arranged in rows of 5, from the doorway of the main hall and further in. Obviously, the further in your table was, the higher your status was. Currently, most of the tables were occupied. Aside from an empty table in the first row, the other empty tables were all arranged after the 10th row. Just find some place to sit, Qi Zhantai said, the corners of her lips lifting up slightly to reveal a crafty smile. She had posed a difficult problem to Ling Han, as she wanted to see where this guy would choose to sit. It was difficult because there was only one empty table at the front, but this was the first row, and only the strongest of the younger generation had the right to sit there. Ling Han's cultivation level was obviously still far from this level. But if Ling Han obediently went to sit at the back, this showed that he did not have much ambition and would capitulate easily. Yet Ling Han did not ponder much about this so-called difficult problem. He only gave a short nod, and without thinking much, headed to the first row.
Although he had let go of the glory of his last life, he still possessed the heart of an elite warrior. Since there was an empty space in the first row, he would naturally choose to sit there. Qi Zhantai stuck out her tongue, and thought that there would be a good show to watch soon. But she did not overstep her limits. She quickly commanded a servant to go forth to Heaven's Medicine Pavilion to inform Zhang Wei Shan. Otherwise, if things became too much to handle, it would not be easily ended. Seeing Ling Han stride towards the front, those who had already occupied their seats all revealed shocked expressions, as they all thought the same thing. Who is this guy?
Looks like he's going to sit in the front row.
But out of the 5 tables in the first row, 4 were already occupied. The last empty table also actually had an owner. It's just that he hadn't arrived yet.
It belonged to Jin Wuji. Was this guy an idiot?
He even dared to steal Jin Wuji's table.
Interesting.
The 4 people who were already seated in the first row all smiled. Some of them wore mocking smiles, while there were some who were genuinely smiling in curiosity, wondering whether this brat was an arrogant fool or someone who had real power to back it up. However, very soon their gazes became focused on Lu Yutong. This young girl was really too beautiful. Though she seemed a little cold, this was also a kind of temperament. Moreover, she was very strong. Could it be that she was the master, and the brat in front was only her attendant? It was more logical to think this way.
Biff.
The 4 of them almost choked, because they saw Ling Han sit down boldly while Lu Yutong sat at his side. With this, who was the master and who was the attendant was easily seen.
It was really inconceivable.
Such an extraordinarily beautiful and extremely powerful maiden could only be seated at this brat's side. Who exactly was he? He must be the heir to some great clan. Otherwise, he would not have dared to take Jin Wuji's table.
Ha, I've made you all wait.
Clear laughter was heard all of a sudden as a tall, thin man strode out of the inside door of the main hall.
He had a majestic gait, presenting a kingly visage.
This was not a ruler in terms of power, but in terms of a kind of confidence in himself.
Greetings, 4th Prince. Everyone stood from their seats.
Now that the host was here, the guests would of course have to stand up and pay due respects. The 4th Prince had a table of his own, and his table was the furthermost in front. Moreover, he sat facing the doorway, while the others sat facing the walls.
Sit, everyone, please be seated.
The 4th Prince, Qi Yongye's eyes swept over his guests, and when he discovered an unfamiliar face in the first row, he could not help feeling startled.
Who might this be? Why had he taken Jin Wuji's table?
But his gaze quickly spotted Lu Yutong, and his heart was stirred. He also belonged to the Huyang Academy, so he naturally recognized Lu Yutong to be a noble daughter of the Lu clan. Yet she actually sat at Ling Han's side. This. How could Qi Yongyi not experience a great shock at this? But he was still the 4th Prince, and so was naturally very shrewd. There was no change in the expression on his face, though his eyes had still stayed on Lu Yutong's figure for a few moments longer. This did not attract the suspicion of others, because this was a normal occurrence. She was so beautiful that any man would want to stare at her for a moment longer. Let me introduce to you. Qi Yongyi revealed a smile, confident and calm, displaying fully his royal air. He pointed at the first person seated at the first table towards the left in the first row. This is Li Dongyu, Brother Li. He's the personally taught disciple of the sect master of Stone Wolf sect. Brother Li, it has been a long time. You're about to break through to Gushing Spring Tier, right? Li Dongyu laughed heartily and said, 4th Prince, you should not tease me. Even you have not broken through to Gushing Spring Tier. How is it possible that I would be qualified to?
Brother Li is really too modest.
Qi Yongyi pointed at the second person towards the left. This is Bailey Teng Yun, the son of the sect master of Bailey sect. Bailey Teng Yun was extremely young. He seemed to be only about 17 or 18 years old. He was a little cool, only giving a light HN as greeting. Qi Yongyi did not take it to heart, and continued his round of introductions. Next is Xia Zhongguang, Brother Xia. He came from Fuyang Town, and he's only 18 years old. He did not participate in the previous De Yuan tournament, but I believe that he will definitely show extraordinary talent in this tournament.
This is Lu Yu, Brother Lu.
Like Brother Xia, he's also 18 years old, and I am very optimistic about his upcoming performance. And the last dash, Qi Yongye's gaze stopped on Ling Han's figure, and his words paused. He did not continue to speak, because he did not know how to continue. However, he did not feel the slightest bit awkward. Instead, he only smiled and looked at Ling Han expectantly, as if waiting for Ling Han to introduce himself. He could also admit that he himself was curious about Ling Han's identity. Who exactly was he to be able to have the noble daughter of the Lu clan serve by his side?
Chapter 61. The first prince has arrived. I am Ling Han. Ling Han stood up, offered a faint smile, and then sat back down.
Was that all? Ling clan, which great clan was that?
Everyone was very curious.
There was no Ling clan in the 8 great clans of the imperial city. Could it be that the Ling clan was a great clan from some other city? That was possible, because there were 36 great cities in Rain Country, and there was a number of great clans in each city. That brought the total of great clans in the whole country to over 100. Who could say with certainty that they knew all of them?
However, the most surprised was definitely Qi Yongyi. He was the only one who knew Lu Yutong's real identity. To be able to have a princess of the Lu clan wait upon him, what kind of colossal existence could this Ling clan be? Whatever it was, he still had to maintain a good relationship with Ling Han. Qi Yongyi was an expert at manipulating the mood, and very quickly, everyone's attention was again focused on him.
There was a round of laughter in the main hall, as everyone felt that this prince really had a unique charm, causing many of them to be of a mind to swear loyalty under his banner. Announcing the arrival of the first prince. It was at this very moment that a loud shout was heard from outside.
The first prince has arrived. Everyone was extremely shocked. Who didn't know that the first prince and the fourth prince were currently embroiled in a fierce competition for the king's position? Why had he suddenly come here?
Fourth brother. Very soon, the first prince appeared at the doorway of the main hall.
He was a very handsome man in his 30s.
He had a tall and sturdy figure with an exceptional bearing.
He was all smiles as he took great strides towards Qi Yongyi, looking nothing like a rival or enemy of the latter. Qi Yongyi stood and walked forwards to greet the first prince. He was also all smiles as he said, "Eldest brother, what are you doing here?"
When the two of them neared each other, they both tacitly stopped their advance.
They both watched each other with smiles, yet neither had any intention of extending their arms to embrace the other in greeting. My fourth brother is hosting a banquet.
I, as the eldest brother, must of course come to show my support, the first prince said, smiling.
Qi Yongyi could not help but frown slightly at this.
The reason he was hosting this banquet was to gain the will of the people to gather support for when he ascends to the position of the king in the future.
There was no way that the first prince did not know this. Then the reason he was here was obvious. He was here to ruin things for him.
Then I'll thank you, eldest brother, he said in a very false manner, though his face still wore a dazzling smile.
The first prince paused and said, I've also brought a noble guest with me.
Oh, and who might that be?
Qi Yongyi asked.
He knew that the first prince would not have come just to show his face.
The latter would definitely have a more substantial move planned.
Brother Gua, please, the first prince called in the direction of the doorway. Everyone turned to take a look at the first prince's noble guest, and saw a young man in grey walk in. He was of medium height and his features were very ordinary, but when they saw the badge that hung on his chest, there was a slight change in all of their expressions.
Yellow-grade medium-level alchemist. Alchemists were an existence that would be welcomed anywhere, as well as an existence that no self-respecting party could lack.
If a party possessed the aid and support of an alchemist, then to individual cultivators, or even smaller powers, this party would be very attractive as an ally.
Martial artists were too dependent on alchemical medicines. Fourth brother, let me introduce to you. This here is Gua Ding Quan, Brother Gua, and he's a yellow-grade medium-level alchemist. And Brother Gua's master is even more impressive.
He is the one and only Grandmaster Duanmu, who has been acclaimed as one who excels in both sword skill and alchemy.
The first prince wore a dazzling smile, and was feeling very cheerful. On the other hand, Qi Yongyi felt a bitter taste on his tongue. He knew that the first prince was here to ruin things, and unfortunately, it seemed like he was going to succeed. The fact that Gua Ding Quan was a yellow-grade medium-level alchemist was not the main point. The crux of the matter was that his master, Duanmu Chong Feng,
was an actual black-grade low-level alchemist. Although currently, the first prince was only close with Guading Quan, but a disciple could also in a sense represent the master's partiality. The first prince was issuing a signal to everyone. He had a very good relationship with Duanmu Changfeng and has obtained the latter's support. This definitely added a very heavy bargaining chip to his pile, while also being a very heavy blow to Qi Yongyi. The weight of an alchemist was too much.
Brother Gua,
Qi Yongyi said in greeting, still maintaining a wide smile. He could not chase the first prince and Guading Quan away, or rumors would definitely spread, saying that he was a petty character. As a person who was seated in the upper echelons of society, he definitely had to present himself as a generous man. If he couldn't do even this small thing, then what right did he have to inherit the position of the king? Guading Quan was very arrogant. Even towards the fourth prince's greeting, he only replied with a HN. He was really displaying an all-out arrogance and pride of an alchemist. This profession was really too scarce, so all alchemists were treated with utmost respect and as a result, completely spoilt.
Brother Gua, please sit.
Qi Yongyi was secretly angered, but still displayed a very polite demeanor. Guading Quan's eyes swept over the scene, before walking forwards in a straight line. If he was sitting, then he was naturally going to sit in the first row. Otherwise, how could he preserve his pride? Because all the tables here were arranged 5 in one row, and there was not much of a gap in between tables, so on both sides, there was a very wide aisle. So, Guading Quan could only choose to walk up the left aisle or the right aisle. The unfortunate thing was that he chose to walk straight up the left aisle, and arrived at Ling Han's table. But whether or not it was because he had spotted Lu Yutong, that was something that only he himself knew.
You can get lost now,
he said coldly. How overbearing. The first thing he said upon opening his mouth was to tell someone else to get lost. Did he really think he was the emperor? However, he himself was a yellow-grade medium-level alchemist, while his master was a black-grade alchemist, so he really did have the confidence to be so overbearing. Ling Han smiled. In the eyes of others, this meant that he was apparently going to give in to Guading Quan's overbearing demand, but Lu Yutong knew that it was the exact opposite. Ling Han was angry. Not only that, he was very angry. He said, "Why don't you try saying that again? Get lost. Get lost. Get lost." Guading Quan naturally did not feel scared of this subtle threat. He not only said it again, he even emphasized his demand 3 times. A coldness flashed through Ling Han's eyes. In an instant, his hand flashed out, taking hold of Guading Quan's neck. With a harsh tug and a pang, Guading Quan's face was instantly pressed firmly onto the table. The shock wave of his face meeting the table caused the wine jar to topple over, and immediately, wine splashed all over his face. Guading Quan was firmly pressed down onto the table, and he started struggling vigorously, intending to get out of Ling Han's hold. Yet it was all pointless effort. The main hall was dead silent. This guy was really too great. He even dared to hit an alchemist. Everyone sucked their breath in shock. He had balls, he was a real man. The first prince was initially startled, before suddenly erupting in fury. He never imagined that someone would actually dare to beat up Guading Quan. Initially, his aura had completely overwhelmed Qi Yongyi, but with this show of force, Guading Quan was not the only one who had lost his face. He was also embarrassed. He strode quickly towards Ling Han and his right hand flashed out, intending to grab onto Ling Han's neck, shouting, "I command you to release him!" Shwa! A strong wind blew past, and Lu Yutong had already acted, blocking the first prince's action. The first prince was stunned by her beauty at first, but immediately his gaze regained focus. Everything could be sacrificed for the king's position, and Guading Quan was a trump card that decided whether or not he could defeat the fourth prince, thus he could not allow any problems to emerge.
"Step down,"
he shouted. He did not counterattack immediately because he did not want to harm such a beautiful maiden if he could avoid it. Lu Yutong only gave a wave of her hand and said, "Get lost. Get lost." She actually told the first prince to get lost. She was indeed extremely daring. When Qi Yongyi saw this, he could not help smiling. He was the only one who knew that Lu Yutong was a noble daughter of the Lu clan. If the first prince offended her, that was definitely not anything good for him. But while this would be a bad thing for the first prince for himself, this would be a good thing indeed.
Chapter 62. Leaving in Anger.
Get lost. With a casual wave of his hand, Guo Dingquan was easily flung away by Ling Han, and with a pang, he crashed into the nearest wall.
Bastard! Guo Dingquan got back to his feet and shouted in a towering rage.
He was really about to die from his utmost fury. As an alchemist, someone who was respected and revered by everyone, he had actually been pressed onto a table, wine had splattered all over his face, and he had even been flung away to crash into a wall.
Thankfully, dinner had not been served yet.
Otherwise, his face would have been even more colorful, decorated by a myriad of dishes.
You want to try it again? Ling Han asked coldly. This was not the first alchemist he had thrashed, and definitely wouldn't be the last.
I want you to die!
Guo Dingquan roared furiously. Tang tang tang, with heavy steps, he charged over to Ling Han again. As an alchemist, he had never experienced such great shame. If he did not avenge himself, then he could not live with himself. Ling Han moved.
Pang! Guo Dingquan was once again held by his neck, and as expected, slammed onto the table face first.
The difference was that Ling Han had used more strength this time, causing the table to be broken in half by the force.
A dash! Veins were protruding all over Guo Dingquan's face in his anger, and his eyes looked like they were about to spit out fire. However, he did not charge a second time, because he had finally sensed that the gap between Ling Han and himself was far too wide.
Damn it, based on aura, Ling Han could only be about the same level as he himself was. At most they were both in the 4th layer of element gathering tier, but why was he so strong? He turned his head to look at the first prince. The latter was stuck in a confrontation with Lu Yutong, so could not possibly assist him at this time. He raised his voice and said, "Whoever helps me thrash this brat, I will gift him with 10 embracing origin pills." What embracing origin pill? For anyone below the 9th layer of element gathering tier, this is a valuable treasure. It can help one in the formation of the origin nucleus and increase the chances of success by about 30%. To give out 10 pills in one go, what opulence! Everyone was discussing this spiritedly, but there were not many who were really interested in taking up Guo Dingquan's offer, because who amongst those invited was not a genius? For a genius, if they even had to depend on external support just to form their origin nucleus, what right did they have to the name of genius? When Guo Dingquan saw this, he could not help grit his teeth and finally announced, "An earth and fire pill." Damn, an earth and fire pill. This time, everyone could no longer just stay in their seats calmly. Even Qi Yongyi and the first prince seemed tempted by this new offer. The earth and fire pill had similar effects as the purple origin pill. It was also used to help a martial artist break through to the gushing spring tier, but its effects were much weaker than the latter. At most, it could only raise the chance of success by 20%. But still, it was a very rare and extremely valuable spiritual medicine. Even for a genius like Qi Yongyi, he also had been stuck at the peak period of the 9th layer of element gathering tier for over half a year. Normally, if one could manage to break through to gushing spring tier within 3 to 5 years' time, that was already a feat worthy of praise. Meanwhile, the first prince had already reached the peak period of the 9th layer of element gathering tier 7 years ago, yet his cultivation level remained unchanged even until now, showing the extreme difficulty of breaking through to the gushing spring tier. An earth and fire pill could very possibly save quite a few years' time of cultivation for even a genius, so it was extremely valuable. However, although the ingredients required for the concoction of an earth and fire pill were not as costly as the ingredients for a purple origin pill, they were still extremely rare, and while there were many willing to buy, none were willing to sell. Otherwise, with the financial resources available to the royal house of the De Yuan king, they would have been able to afford a few of them. As a result, everyone immediately turned to stare feverishly at Ling Han, as if he himself was an earth and fire pill. What impudence! Where do you people think this place is? Qi Yongyi immediately spoke coldly. He was a man that knew what his role was, so he naturally suppressed the covetousness he felt in his heart. Guo Dingquan was working for the first prince, so he of course would not bother to assist the former. Moreover, Ling Han had an unknown relationship with Lu Yutong, and with this, his position was extremely clear. He'd help Ling Han. With this exclamation from the 4th prince, everyone immediately regained their composure. This was the residence of the 4th prince, and if they dared to come to arms here, then in a sense, it was no different than rebellion.
Gua Dingquan breathed heavily and glared at Qi Yongyi fiercely before suddenly turning around and leaving. There was no way that he could swallow this great offense. He was going to fetch his master. No one could insult an alchemist in this manner.
Brother Gua! Brother Gua! The first prince hurriedly called as he chased after Gua Dingquan's heels. As sudden as the two's arrival was, they left just as suddenly. There was a temporary calm in the main hall. Some of the guests felt sorry for missing out on an opportunity to obtain the earth and fire pill, while some other guests were curious about the future development of this matter.
Come, replace the table.
Qi Yongyi began to manipulate the atmosphere and once again displayed his personal charm, causing the atmosphere of the banquet to regain its liveliness. All of them were extremely interested in Ling Han. It was not difficult to restrain Gua Dingquan.
In fact, 80% of the people present here would be able to do so easily, but to dare to do so, perhaps only Ling Han possessed such courage.
Brother Ling, may I know where do you originate from?
Someone finally asked. Grey Cloud Town. Ling Han had no intention of concealing it. After all, since he was intending to participate in the Daiyuan tournament, he could not falsify his identity.
Grey Cloud Town?
All of them gave a start at this. Wasn't that a small place under the jurisdiction of the Daiyuan city? Then where did Ling Han get his confidence from?
He was not the only one who had made a great display of power, for even the girl beside him appeared to be very proud.
She had not even taken the first prince seriously. Qi Yongyi was even more surprised. Ling Han came from Grey Cloud Town? Then how had he developed a relationship with Lu Yutong? Even though he himself was of nobility, when compared to Lu Yutong, there was still a bit of a gap between them. After all, they could only be considered as one of the branch families of the imperial family, and after so many generations, their relation with the imperial family was not really very close. Unless he could ascend to the position of the Daiyuan king, even he would not be qualified to marry Lu Yutong. Yet Ling Han could have Lu Yutong follow closely by his side. A brat from a tiny little Grey Cloud Town, what right did he have to do such a thing? As the various dishes were served, everyone too felt slightly famished and so began eating. Martial artists expended a lot of energy, and so would become hungry more easily than normal people.
Ha 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 ha, apologies, apologies.
Fourth prince, I've arrived late. A long bout of laughter was heard and a tall young man walked in. He appeared to be about 20 years old, and had an astonishing aura to him.
The third son of the Jin clan, Jin Wuji. Jin Wuxiang followed right behind, imitating the former's steps slavishly.
He seemed a bit like a mouse that had seen a cat, and there was absolutely no sign of his prior arrogance.
Brother Jin, why are you so late?
Qi Yongyi asked, smiling as he stood.
I had some trifling matters to deal with,
Jin Wuji said, as he continued to walk forwards.
Elder brother, that's him.
That's him. When they arrived at the first row, Jin Wuxiang immediately called out, as he pointed at Ling Han. Jin Wuji's eyes swept over the first row, and could not hold back an expression of shock from appearing on his face, as he said, Younger sister disciple Lu, what are you doing here? He was also a disciple of Huyang Academy, so he naturally recognized the princess, Lu Yutong. Lu Yutong only nodded back calmly and did not make any further response. Jin Wuji knew her personality, so he did not take her cool response to heart. His gaze turned towards Ling Han, and coldness flashed through his eyes immediately. Initially, he had only been a little late, but when he encountered his younger brother at the entrance and found out what the latter had experienced, he immediately ordered someone to investigate Ling Han. This was not difficult. Since he had already registered, there would definitely be a profile of him in the records. A mere young master from a tiny clan of Grey Cloud Town, and he actually dared to oppose the Jin clan. He definitely did not think that Lu Yutong would actually deign to like Ling Han. Even if she did, the Lu clan would definitely not agree to such a match. This would practically be a great dishonor to the clan. As a result, he did not fear that Lu Yutong would defend Ling Han. Moreover, his power was above Lu Yutong.
Brat, get lost from my seat,
he said coldly. Chapter 63. Damn. Hit the wrong person. Ling Han could not withhold a smile from turning up at the corners of his lips, and said, Are you sure you want this seat?
Hang. This was originally my seat.
Jin Wuji said coldly.
Very well, since you want it, then I'll just let you have it. Ling Han stood up very candidly.
Pooh! Quite a few people exclaimed in surprise.
Because there really was too big a difference between what Ling Han was doing now and what he had done just now. Previously, Ling Han had even dared to thrash the disciple of someone who excelled in sword arts and alchemy openly in front of the first prince.
Yet, now he was actually scared off. It was inconceivable. It was really inconceivable. They were not the only ones who thought it was inconceivable. Lu Yutong was in complete bewilderment. Ling Han had left a very distinct impression on her. Though he may appear to be utterly calm, he was prouder than anyone else. How was it possible that he would give in to Jin Wuji's demand? If they really had to battle, she was adequate enough to face Jin Wuji. And even if the Jin clan stepped out and interfered, didn't he still have the colossal existence of Heaven's Medicine Pavilion behind him? In the whole of Rain Country, what party would dare to offend Heaven's Medicine Pavilion? None. There were definitely none. Because this huge power did not only exist in Rain Country, but also possessed branches in the 9 countries in the desolate north, so whether it was in terms of power or wealth, it had a terrifying amount of both. Just think, when martial artists cultivate, they would definitely need the support of alchemical pills, and Heaven's Medicine Pavilion was a place where alchemical pills could be sold, so how could there be a lack of elite martial artists willing to act on their behalf? From the reverence and respect Xueqi felt towards Ling Han, he had practically recognized the latter as his teacher. If the Jin clan dared to harm Ling Han, he would definitely unleash the power of the Heaven's Medicine Pavilion branch of Rain Country and obliterate the Jin clan. Since the facts were as so, then why would he need to fear? Ling Han stretched out an arm and drew Lu Yutong to himself. An enchanting blush instantly appeared on the young girl's beautiful face, and there was absolutely no hint of the icy beauty from before. Damn! When they saw this dazzling, extraordinarily beautiful maiden, everyone was filled with such irrepressible jealousy that their eyes turned red, wanting nothing more than to chop off the arm Ling Han was holding Lu Yutong with. Lu Yutong's mind had completely blanked. She only felt as if she was walking on clouds, and when she followed Ling Han to sit in one of the tables at the row further behind, even though Ling Han had long withdrawn his arm, she still had not regained her senses. Her heart was still rapidly beating. Just wait and we'll see a good show, Ling Han said softly by her ear. Lu Yutong froze at this and said, What good show? Ling Han pouted a bit and said, Don't forget that gua something from just now had gone to get reinforcements. You're planning to trick Jin Wuji? Lu Yutong finally understood. Ling Han smiled and said, I've already asked him if he really wanted that seat, and he himself agreed to it, so what does that have to do with me? Lu Yutong could not help pursing her lips in a delicate smile, but immediately frowned, and said, Duanmu Chongfeng couldn't be that hot-headed, right? I bet he has already restrained a whole stomach's worth of anger from yesterday, and when that whatever returned, he'd definitely exaggerate the story, thus the old man's wrath would definitely be extraordinarily large. Moreover, when I was thrashing that whatever, I immediately acted without saying a single word, Ling Han laughed and said. So, there is a high possibility that the old guy would do something like that. When that Duanmu Chongfeng realizes that he has punished the wrong person, he would definitely focus on you. Lu Yutong's delicate brow wrinkled in a frown. I think that by that time, Zhu Hexin and Zhang Wei Shan will have already arrived. However, even if they have not, I have my own ways of dealing with that old man. Ling Han revealed a confident smile, for Zhu Hexin had told about Duanmu Chongfeng to him. The old man was praised as one who excelled in sword arts and alchemy, and the sword technique that he practiced was Sweeping Cloud Sword Arts, a black-grade low-level martial arts technique. However, the old man only managed to learn 7 moves, while the complete Sweeping Cloud Sword Arts had a total of 9 moves. The book of sword arts techniques that the old guy managed to get his hands on should be a partially ruined relic, which was why he had not managed to learn the last 2 moves. Coincidentally, Ling Han possessed the complete Sweeping Cloud Sword Arts, so no matter from which angle one looked, he had the upper hand in the upcoming confrontation. Lu Yutong has definitely been badly influenced by Ling Han, and she could not withhold an expectant look from appearing on her face. Because of Ling Han's lack of moral backbone, all of the guests felt shame for sharing his company, thus no one else spoke to him. Meanwhile, Jin Wuxiang turned his head repeatedly, displaying a challenging expression to Ling Han. From his expression, he had clearly held disdain for Ling Han as well.
He had originally thought that Ling Han would be stubborn, and in that way, his elder brother would definitely have an excuse to heavily injure Ling Han. He had never thought that the guy was the type to bully the weak while fearing the strong.
But, do you think that you'll be able to escape just like this? Jin Wuxiang humphed coldly in his heart.
Once the banquet ended and they had left the residence of the fourth prince, Jin Wuji would definitely act and ruthlessly teach Ling Han a lesson. They still had to give face to the fourth prince. Ling Han's capitulation was something that even Qi Yongyi had not thought would happen, so he too grew disdainful of Ling Han. As a result, he did not bother to waste any more time on Ling Han, and went on with his original plans, starting to persuade the other guests in hope that everyone invited would agree to support him.
Master, that's him.
Not long after, a voice filled with fury was heard.
Gua Dingquan had once again appeared at the entry to the main hall, and he was pointing inside.
Everyone turned around at this, but they only felt their eyes blurring as a figure flew past with a terrifying speed. It was an old man dressed in a grey robe, with a sword on his back.
His figure flashed by and soon appeared next to Jin Wuji. He then stretched out a hand, took hold of Jin Wuji's neck and fiercely pressed it down.
Pang!
The power behind this move was extremely large, and it had broken the table into two halves.
By now, the dishes and wine had all been served, so instantly, the wine and gravy from the dishes had all splattered onto Jin Wuji's face.
This was an uninvited calamity. Definitely an uninvited calamity. How could Jin Wuji have imagined that someone would actually dare attack him?
Moreover, his attacker was so overwhelmingly powerful that he didn't even have the ability to defend himself, and in such a confusion, suffered this kind of calamity.
Ha 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 ha, you were so arrogant, why don't you try being arrogant again? Gua Dingquan had raced over, and aimed a few kicks on Jin Wuji's behind. His whole face was twisted in fury, as if he wanted nothing more than to commit murder. Jin Wuxiang was initially startled before shouting, "Why are you beating him up?" He felt very wronged. Because all this while, the Jin brothers were always the ones who bullied others, yet today, his elder brother had actually been thrashed by two people they had never even met before. He didn't even manage to react in time due to shock. Gua Dingquan took one glance at him, and only felt that Jin Wuxiang was a completely unfamiliar face. It was not the icy beauty from before. Still, he did not take this disparity to heart, and only continued to kick Jin Wuji furiously. The people involved in the confrontation each had their own side. One side had misunderstood while the other side was stuck in a complete daze, but others immediately came to a realization. Gua Dingquan had brought his master who excelled in both sword arts and alchemy, Duanmu Chongfeng, yet had hit the wrong target. Poor Jin Wuji, he was painfully thrashed for no reason. At this moment, he had to be feeling extremely gloomy. No wonder Ling Han had yielded the seat to Jin Wuji just now. Apparently, he had already planned to lay a trap for him. Damn, this guy was really too devious. When they saw that Jin Wuji was still being thrashed while Jin Wuxiang seemed to be at a complete loss, quite a few people could not hold themselves back from laughing out loud. Moreover, the laughter was getting louder and louder, and finally spread to all the others as everyone held their stomachs and laughed raucously. Gua Dingquan too finally realized that something was wrong. He turned Jin Wuji to face him, and when he saw the unfamiliar face that was completely splattered with wine and gravy, he could not help giving a start and said, "Who are you?"
Pooh!
Jin Wuji instantly spat out a mouthful of blood in anger. "You don't even ***king know who I am. Then why did you beat me up? And you had thrashed me so ferociously even? Who had he actually offended? No matter who you people are, I will definitely have you pay the price." He roared in fury. Chapter 64. Effortlessly controlling the situation. "This is not the person who had thrashed you?" Duanmu Chongfeng was also startled, as well as slightly displeased. "Since this wasn't the guy, then why the heck did you point at this guy the moment you came in?"
No!
Gua Dingquan was also very depressed. "Since you're not Ling Han, then what the heck were you doing sitting here?" He looked at Jin Wuji and asked, "Where is the person who had been sitting here before?" Jin Wuji was not a fool, so he immediately realized. He had fallen into Ling Han's trap. This brat had offended these two people, and coincidentally, he had demanded for the brat to relinquish his seat to him. As a result, the brat took advantage of the situation to lay a trap for him, causing him to suffer horribly.
That damned little beast! Ling Han!
He roared loudly, "Get out here, I'm going to kill you!"
Ling Han!
When Duanmu Chong Feng heard this name, killing intent instantly appeared in his heart. This was the name of the junior who had caused him to sustain extraordinary loss of face. An old fox like him of course immediately realized that both he and Jin Wuji had been played by Ling Han.
Schwa! Everyone's eyes turned to look at Ling Han.
Ling Han was sitting upright, and even with so many people focused on him, he did not feel the slightest bit nervous.
He took a sip of wine, and could not help recollecting that in his last life, all the wines he had drunk were the best quality wine.
It was definitely not something this so-called excellent wine could be compared to. For the moment, Jin Wuji had no intention of getting his revenge on Guoding Quan.
Moreover, the latter had Duanmu Chong Feng with him, and this was a powerful warrior of gushing spring tear, whose prowess was stronger than his own by who knows how many times.
He looked at Ling Han, his hands tightly gripped into fists. Gravy and blood had spilled from his wounds due to being smashed into the table covered his face. His appearance was ferocious and twisted. It could practically scare kids to tears.
"Ah, you've played us,"
Jin Wuxiang called out, pointing at Ling Han. He had finally realized the truth.
"Ha ha ha ha."
Quite a few people could not hold themselves back from laughing aloud. So the saying held true, though a dragon has 9 sons, each of them are different. This Jin Wuxiang was a complete idiot. It didn't even seem that he and Jin Wuji could have come from the same father and mother.
"You are indeed extremely daring,"
Duanmu Chong Feng said darkly. He actually dared to manipulate even himself. Looks like this little junior was really tired of living. Seeing Duanmu Chong Feng speak, Jin Wuji immediately fell silent.
Obviously, the former also had some kind of conflict with Ling Han, and this man was in gushing spring tear, and his status was far higher than his own as well.
Even if he intended to get his own revenge, he would have to wait for his turn. Duanmu Chong Feng took great strides towards Ling Han, his eyes cold. He had already decided, even if Xueqi Xin and Zhang Wei Shan both came, he would still not spare this insolent junior. Guoding Quan followed closely, a cold smile upon his lips.
This brat dared to trick even his master.
He was really dead this time. Duanmu Chong Feng did not walk very fast, but every step he took caused the whole main hall to shake slightly, showing the towering rage that this man, one who excelled in both sword arts and alchemy, was currently feeling. Even Qi Yongyi, as the 4th prince, dared not speak up in defense of Ling Han at this moment. What was Ling Han going to do now? His move just now was indeed very beautiful, managing to trap and trick 2 of his enemies simultaneously. However, no matter if it was Duanmu Chong Feng or the Jin clan, neither was a party that could be offended without harsh consequences. Everyone felt extremely curious about his next move. Ling Han did not look at all like that kind of fool. Lu Yutong immediately stood, and assumed a defensive stance in front of Ling Han. However, she was immediately pushed lightly aside by Ling Han. Ling Han only said calmly, "The 4 winds rise, clouds in the heavens thrown into disorder, the tiger and crane both appear, creating invincibility."
Ji!
Duanmu Chong Feng's advancing steps paused, and he looked as if he had been struck by a lightning bolt, wearing an expression like he had just seen a ghost. But after a short moment, he immediately looked very excited, so much in fact that even his body began shaking. This was the verbal chant for the 8th move of the Sweeping Cloud Sword Arts. The Sweeping Cloud Sword Arts was a black-grade medium-level martial arts technique. He had learned it from a secret scroll he had obtained from an ancient site. Unfortunately, due to the long passage of time, the parts showing the last 2 moves had completely deteriorated. There was only a verbal chant as well as an illustration for the 8th move, but there wasn't even a name for the 9th move left behind. The reason why he could afford to not take Xueqi Xin and Zhang Wei Shan seriously was because he possessed the Sweeping Cloud Sword Arts. The 3 of them were all in the 3rd layer of Gushing Spring Tier, but because of the Sweeping Cloud Sword Arts, even if Xueqi Xin and Zhang Wei Shan joined forces, they would still be no match for him. But it was precisely because this sword arts technique was so powerful that he desired to obtain the last 2 moves even in his dreams. Thus, when Ling Han recited the verbal chant from Sweeping Cloud Sword Arts, how could he not be excited?
You know it?"
Duanmu Chong Feng said, his voice stuttering.
"Naturally.
Ling Han nodded. Will you teach me? The old guy's face was filled with expectation. Ling Han smiled and said, that will depend on your performance. Duanmu Changfeng did not even spend any time to consider, and said, whatever request you have, just say it. Whether it is alchemical pills, or resources for cultivation, I can give them to you. See. Around them, everyone was at an absolute loss. Just now, Duanmu Changfeng seemed like he would stop at nothing in his desire to kill Ling Han. So how come his attitude changed so drastically? Was this some kind of magic trick?
Master Dash, Guoding Quan had become anxious.
What kind of demonic magic had this brat used?
Ling Han pointed at Jin Wuji and his brother, and turned to point at Guoding Quan as well, and said, these three guys, they are unpleasant to my eyes.
Very well.
A very experienced man like Duanmu Changfeng of course instantly understood Ling Han's meaning.
He did not say another word before he lifted up Guoding Quan in one move, and in a flash arrived in front of the Jin brothers. His left hand gave a shove, and a very powerful, irresistible force caused the two Jin brothers to fall down onto the floor.
Pung 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 pung, Duanmu Changfeng kicked and punched, ravaging the three as much as he liked. Everyone else was completely dumbfounded. Ling Han had just said a few words that sounded like some kind of verbal chant, and Duanmu Changfeng actually became Ling Han's underling, obeying his commands. Admiration for Ling Han had risen in all of them. Whether it was Guoding Quan, the Jin brothers, or even Duanmu Changfeng, they had all been played, being in the palm of his hand. The Jin brothers were completely depressed, the depression sinking into their very bones. What great enmity or conflict did they have with Duanmu Changfeng? Previously, they had been thrashed by this old man for no reason, but that could be explained by it all being a misunderstanding due to Ling Han tricking them both. But what about this time?
But since a powerful warrior of gushing spring tear had made his move, what else could they do other than obediently suffer the thrashing without complaints?
Qi Yongye's face was twitching all over. Since the moment he saw that Ling Han had Lu Yutong accompany him, he already knew that this guy was definitely not ordinary, but to be awesome to such an extent caused even him to experience a great shock. Duanmu Changfeng was not just a warrior of gushing spring tear, he was also a black-grade low-level alchemist, being slightly well-known in Rain Country. Even if a powerful warrior of spiritual ocean tier met him, the former would be extremely courteous and polite. But now, to put it in a coarse manner, what difference did he have with being Ling Han's underling, simply doing as the latter commanded? What happened to the dignity of an alchemist, or the moral integrity of a warrior of gushing spring tear? However, if he maintained a good relationship with Ling Han, did that mean he would be able to take Duanmu Changfeng under his own banner? The first prince was so excited just from being able to befriend Guoding Quan. If he managed to attract Duanmu Changfeng to his side, then his position would be incomparably steady, and no one would be able to stop him from inheriting the king's position. And thus, when Zhu Xian and Zhang Weishan arrived at a later time, they saw such a scene. Duanmu Changfeng was thrashing his own disciple and the Jin brothers as if he had gone mad, while the person they were supposedly here to rescue, Ling Han, was leisurely sitting, drinking wine and eating. What kind of game were they playing here? Chapter 65. Summoned by the Daiyuan King. Guoding Quan and the Jin brothers felt gloomy to the extreme. For Guoding Quan, master beating up his disciple was the same as a father beating his son, a law of nature, so how could he even think of avenging himself? If he did, that would fall into the crime of ingratitude and cheating his own master, and wherever he fled to, he'd be pointed out by every man. Meanwhile, the Jin brothers knew that the old man that had thrashed them was the one who excelled in sword arts and alchemy, a person who possessed extremely high status. Even when the Daiyuan King met him, he'd still treat the latter with utmost courtesy and politeness, so even if the older generations of the Jin clan found out about this matter, they would still definitely not seek vengeance for them. Which means that they had suffered this thrashing for absolutely no reason. Ling Han. The three of them gritted their teeth in fury. The chief culprit behind all this was Ling Han, and he had become the object of their utmost hatred.
Young friend Ling, are you all right?
Zhu Xian and Zhang Weishan had raced over, anxious expressions on their faces.
I'm fine.
Ling Han shook his head with a smile. Of course he's fine, everyone else thought.
He played a trick on both the Jin brothers and Duanmu Changfeng, and now even Duanmu Changfeng was listening to his every command, How could he possibly not be fine? However, when they saw the two alchemists arrive and present an overwhelmingly polite demeanor towards Ling Han, they could not control their lips from twitching, and everyone was becoming even more curious about Ling Han's actual identity.
Who was this guy?
The heartbeat of the fourth prince had quickened as he decided to spare no effort to pull Ling Han into his own support camp. If he managed to obtain the support of 3 alchemists through Ling Han, then what else did he have to fear from a mere Lu clan? The position of the Daiyuan king would definitely fall to him. Ling Han did not intend to stay any longer in this place, and so turned around to depart. Duanmu Chong Feng, uncaring of his own face, followed behind him to Heaven's Medicine Pavilion. He still had to ask Ling Han for the verbal chants and illustrations for the last 2 moves of the Sweeping Cloud sword arts. Regarding this matter, Xueqi Xian and Zhang Wei Shan were both very shocked. They had never thought that Ling Han not only had a terrifying level of achievements in terms of alchemy, but possessed extraordinary understanding even in the field of martial arts, so much that he could even guide Duanmu Chong Feng, who has been praised as one who excelled in both sword arts and alchemy. Ling Han did not go back on his word. Upon their return, he taught the missing 8th move of Sweeping Cloud sword arts to Duanmu Chong Feng. As for the 9th move, he would of course not immediately teach him that last move to avoid Duanmu Chong Feng abandoning his benefactor after reaching his goal. At the very least, he would wait until he himself had broken through to the gushing spring tier. By that time, there would be no harm to teach him the 9th move. Anyways, this was just a black-grade medium-level martial arts technique, and for Ling Han, it was completely unimportant. Duanmu Chong Feng apparently understood this as well, as he excused himself shortly after obtaining the verbal chant and illustration for the 8th move. Whether he managed to get the 9th move or not would depend on his future performance. When he returned to his room, Ling Han very quickly fell asleep, and Ling Dongxing had completely no idea how big a commotion his son had created that night. None of those who had the qualifications to be invited to the 4th prince's banquet were mouthy idiots, so the news about Ling Han had only spread around in a very small circle. Early morning the next day, a servant from the royal house of the Daiyuan king arrived at Heaven's Medicine Pavilion, saying that the Daiyuan king had invited Ling Han over for a meeting. The Daiyuan king wanted to see him. Ling Han did not have Lu Yutong follow him. He alone went with that servant to the royal house of the Daiyuan king. Very soon, when they arrived at the study, he saw this local overlord. The Daiyuan king was already 60 years old, but because he had a high cultivation level, he did not look old at all. On the other hand, his figure was tall and sturdy, and his whole body exuded a very powerful aura, displaying the atmosphere of a ruler. The 6th layer of spiritual ocean tier. Ling Han only took one glance, and there was no way for this man to conceal his cultivation level in front of his eyes. On the path of martial arts, every 4th and 7th layer was a different threshold. This Daiyuan king should have been stuck on this layer for a very long time. Greetings, Daiyuan king. Ling Han raised his clasped hands as a salutation. Rise. The Daiyuan king raised his hand, and said with a smile, youngsters nowadays are really impressive. Not only managing to reach the 4th layer of element gathering tier at such a young age, you even have 3 black-grade alchemists revolving around you. Even I have not had such an honor. The Daiyuan king had obviously already found out about the previous night's event. Ling Han laughed mischievously and said, I only have some slight academic attainments in alchemy, which allowed me to share a common language with Grandmaster Zhu and the others. The Daiyuan king naturally would not believe Ling Han's words, yet he did not attempt to point it out bluntly. He only kept his extreme curiosity to himself. Curiosity how such a genius had appeared within the area under his jurisdiction, and a genius that had 3 alchemists willingly revolving around him at that. Then what about that girl of the Lu clan? He asked with a smile. The issue about Lu Yutong couldn't be hidden from him either. Hee, if one is born handsome, he'd be popular everywhere, Ling Han said exaggeratedly. You. The Daiyuan king pointed a bit at Ling Han, as if reprimanding him for being too slick in his speech. He changed the topic swiftly and asked, whom do you think out of my 2 sons is more suitable to inherit my position? Was it appropriate to ask him this question? Ling Han smiled and said, the 2 princes each have their individual merits. Who exactly is more suitable? I believe that Daiyuan king, your majesty, you have your own thoughts. Then what need is there for me to speak more on the subject? The Daiyuan king once again broke out into loud laughter as he thought silently, This slippery kid, his argument is watertight. He once again changed the topic and said, I have one more daughter who has yet to marry.
Are you willing to become my son-in-law?
Damn, were all the people from the royal house of the Dayuan king so direct?
Previously, when he went to register himself for the tournament, the chief butler had also attempted some matchmaking on the spot.
And now, this man, the actual father of the girl, was the same, as if he was in a hurry to marry off his daughter.
Ling Han hurriedly waved his hands and said, My heart is fully focused on martial arts, and within the next few years, I will not consider marriage. The Dayuan king could not help feeling that it was quite a pity. Even Zhu Hexin, Zhang Weishan and Duanmu Changfeng treated Ling Han with utmost respect, so obviously this young man had terrifying ability in the field of alchemy.
If the latter could become his son-in-law, then he would become an unimaginable aid to their family branch. But since Ling Han had already tactfully declined the offer, as a king, he could not be so shameless as to insist. Moreover, his daughter was beautiful, so it was not like there was no one willing to marry her.
If you encounter any troubles in future, you may come and ask me for help. The Dayuan king gave Ling Han a very heavy promise. Even if he could not manage to become Ling Han's father-in-law, he was still determined to maintain an affable relationship with this young man.
Many thanks for your generosity.
Ling Han accepted this favor with grace. After all, the current him was still too weak, so he still needed this kind of support and assistance.
When he returned to Heaven's Medicine Pavilion, he discovered that the fourth prince had come to pay him a visit, and had been waiting for a very long time for his return.
The fourth prince conversed with him for a very long time, but did not really say anything substantial. He was simply trying to maintain a good relationship with Ling Han. Obviously, the fourth prince knew that he was too weak to actually persuade Ling Han to join his ranks. As a result, it was only a relationship between two contemporaries, and the fourth prince didn't even hint that he intended to have Ling Han join him as an underling.
On Ling Han's side, he did not mind having another friend, and so, the two of them naturally had a very delightful conversation.
After resting one more day, the actual day of the Dayuan tournament had finally arrived. The first thing on the agenda was to draw lots. After confirming the 50 seeded participants, the other participants would be divided into groups based on the lots they drew. They would be separated into 50 small groups, which would respectively ascend to their own tournament stage. Then the battle would begin, and the last person standing on the tournament stage would be one of the top 50 participants of this Dayuan tournament, successfully obtaining a place of enrollment into Huyang Academy. Ling Han had also obtained the place of a seeded participant, and this guaranteed that in the first round of battle, he would not encounter any opponents that were too powerful. Of course, no matter how strong his opponent was, he would still hold no fear.
Big Brother Ling.
Li Hao and the others were standing nearby, waving at him. You're tuning in to the Xueqi's Martial Arts Saga YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.